Well, we have a major malfunction over here. Fixed. Our third world tech department fixed the issue. I think you'd be a match for us as patients, Arch. I don't know about that. I saw some comment in here I thought was, I don't know. I think if you all ganged up on me, so let's just keep this like above the waist. How about that? And if you all ganged up on me, you might have a chance in a battle of wits. You wouldn't be completely unarmed, but you definitely would be. You'd definitely be facing one hell of a battle, to which I would most likely be victorious, as usually happens when I enter a battle of wits, regardless of the odds and the amount of players against me. I find it rather refreshing to defeat groups over single individuals. So, I mean, you're all welcome to try. Good evening, and I thought I would start this stream by responding to the chaotic chaos in my chat room, mainly from YouTube. I'm going to say this: if you have people that you want unblocked, I don't want to hear about people being unblocked for the next 30 days. If there's people that want to be unblocked, I will unblock you. However, I'm going to make note of the person posting the request, because if the person I unblock requires being blocked again, you will be blocked with them. Okay, let me be very clear. So you can request all the unblocks you want, but just be aware you're putting your viewership in danger if these people fuck up and get blocked again. I'll block both of you now. I did unblock that person, Teresa. So yeah, here we go, Thomas, with the right the last words of a gasping, dying breath. It's funny, but I think there's yet to be a stream in recent memory, folks. In recent memory, where I haven't offered the opportunity for anyone in the chat room, friend, foe, neutral, Coberger, Gilter, to come on up into the stream. Look at Alicia's already running for cover. What up, beach babe? Let's see what does a beach babe look like? A beach? Nah, no good. We'll have to put a face up. There we go. You have to put a pleasant face up on the screen. Let me scroll through. I'll try to pick one that I find to be my favorite. Let's see here. There's a couple of who is that? Thomas Sharp. Okay. Thomas Sharp. Let's see. What do we got up here? We got Seahawk fan. Yep, cute. We have Alicia. Alicia's just an old rundown house. That's positive. Let's see, what else do we got up here? I'm an acquired taste. We don't want to have to put in too much work, I mean, let's just get naked. So all right. So we'll start out with Seahawk. Let me see here. Hang on. I've seen this person in different rooms. Yeah. Always a nice happy smile. I don't know if you could trust the smile of a woman. You might not. It's all up to you. You know what I'm saying? Man, oh man. But I'm telling you what, I've been finding lately that finding a girlfriend's like finding a good parking spot. You know what I mean? They're just all taken. So you end up just, sticking it into the handicap one and hoping no one catches you. Yikes. Just got showered and got dressed. Don't want to get naked again. Well, it's funny. I sit here on the stream and I probably brush my teeth, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a day. But even though I'm here in my office in front of a microphone, I brush my teeth before I get on my stream. Oh, man. But I do want to say to you folks that tonight is the night that I'm going to be able to reveal to you. Let me change my banners. Let me see if I can change this. I like that one. It's a ticker. Can I add tickers? Delete, edit, show. Man, oh man. All right, I'll use a banner here. I'm going to edit it. Hide it. No, I want to edit this thing. How do you edit it? How do you edit, man? There we go. Delete. Oh, shit. Create a banner. I am going to reveal Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence. Oh, the stupid thing. Well, let me just say. There we are. If you find error in my typing or spelling or punctuation, well, you could just go ahead and stick the rest of your head up your ass and keep it to yourself. How you like them apples? But let me do a couple of polls without putting up a poll. I think you all are aware that there's been a long-standing issue with Bethany Funk's part and her role in this crime, in this case specifically against Brian Christopher Coberger. I think all of us are aware that at one time it was stated by the defense that Bethany Funk has information that's exculpatory to the defendant, that's unique to herself and can only be spoken to by her. How many of you remember that being said by the defense counsel? Give me a 1 for yes and a 2 for no. Because Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence is going to be given to you here tonight. And it will be irrefutable, as is most information that I derive and continue to call fact. Do you all remember that? The defense making that statement, that Bethany Funk has exculpatory evidence for the defendant that's unique to herself. It can only be testified to by herself. Right? We all remember, and we all, now I want to start out with this. You don't want a girlfriend, for fuck's sake. Stick to your one-armed bandit. Damn, Lauren. Don't be taking it personal. I wouldn't say I don't want a girlfriend. I think that's going a little too far. I mean, there are tryouts. You know what I'm saying? Like, I keep sending campaign money to Trump because he said man can't play in women's sports. So far, I don't have to do the dishes or laundry ever again the rest of my life. So, if for nothing else, I got to give Trump credit for that. So, folks, here's the thing. How many? Right. Listen, this is why I'm going to tell a little roundabout, and I'm not really trying to tease it. I'm not really trying to F with you, and I'm not trying to be nearly as arrogant as I can be with this information. But the exculpatory evidence from Bethany Funk, I discovered that evidence over the last few days. And I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I've been baiting you guys and trying to push you guys to try to think independently of all of these conspiracy theories and all these channels solving the crime, and my heart goes out, and my listen, Jesse, you're welcome to come up, but because I can smack Jesse around a little bit while he's up here trying to contradict me. It's your fat armed ass up here, boy. So I've been trying to push people to think, right? I've been trying to force you guys to look at this from a perspective that's much more appropriate, considering what we're really looking at here. We're looking at a man that's charged with the homicide of 4 college students in a home. You know the circumstances. And that's what I've been focusing on. Not on who coulda, woulda, shoulda did it. And now I'm trying to understand, as you all have been, and I'm trying to get others to come along with me, to try to interpret factually as best that we can the data given to us that I call facts. Even if they're lies, they're still a fact, right? And so by trying to push people or try to cajole people or try to drag people down that road, of thinking only within the bounds of the data given us to try to understand the situation that Coberger is in. I've been dropping little hints. And the biggest hint was what used to scroll across this screen about the 4:17 a.m. And my conversation over the last week or less, am trying to get people to grab a hold of that and run with it, because there's much more to that statement than I think met the eye, because it's so important. And here's something too. I want to say this. If I could say something directly to the state of Idaho, specifically to that crack smoking Santa Claus looking piece of shit, Bill Thompson, I would say, you filthy fat bastard should never have held any of this evidence in a sealed situation. And I'm going to show you why they kept it sealed, because it's not just me. As many of you in this audience and people that I don't even know are equally as smart and capable as I am. There's no doubt about that. No matter if I come across as some egotistical fuck, whatever the problem is, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I acknowledge, admit, and I'm happy to say that there's people smarter than me, and there's people that are equally as smart as me. Well, I was calling his arm. He's got a fat arm, that motherfucker. He thinks it's a muscle. Where are you, Jesse? Don't be girly man on me. Don't be girly man on me there, Jess. Who we got here? Let's see this. Why would Bethany Funk be the one to contact Dylan Moore instead of the other way around? Yes, I totally agree with the available evidence shows first time around 417. Okay. Folks, I've been trying to get you to come to hook onto that. And then more importantly, maybe I should have been more specific, to get you to consider that the crime started at 417 for a specific reason. To get you to consider that maybe there's something going on here that's been dangled in front of our face that we've not really grabbed a hold of yet. And so to cut through the bullshit that I'm presenting, because I am giving you, I'm running around in a circle with the bullshit that I'm talking about, but the bullshit I'm talking about is relevant to the facts that you're going to hear that you already know. Facts that will, in fact, confirm that I'm correct. Okay? I don't, Valdris, whatever you're talking about, I really don't care about what your opinion is of the information being released to us by the government and the defense. But that's what's given to us, and that's what we're going to sort through. We are not going to change what's been given to us because of your opinion or your thoughts or some other streamer's fucking conception of what's right and wrong. The data that you have is the only data that's factual, in as much as it's being used in the court of law. And it's a fact, whether it's a lie or it's the truth. It's a factual lie or a factual truth. It's one or the other. But importantly, it's completely part of the case against Brian. Now, if you're in here under the illusion that I'm going to try to solve the crime and name a perpetrator, you need to go hang out with the Pavarotti and the dickheads like that. I just don't go down that road. I got better things to do, like watch the fucking grass grow. I have no interest in trying to solve the crime. Who did it? I don't even know if Brian did it or if Brian didn't do it. I'm not even going to make him stand on any fucking moral ground or any hill to suggest he did or didn't do it, because I don't know. I can't know. Neither can you or anybody else on the fucking internet. Anyway, so back to the topic here. Since we all know that Bethany Funk has been a key interest of the defense, and she's been the one person that fucking bullshit piece of shit Thompson has hidden testimony from. He's kept her away from us. Breaking news. He needs a comb again, but otherwise Jesse's with us.
Yeehaw! Good morning, everybody.
Is it morning where you are?
It is, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that. 8:15.
Oh, I was under the illusion my PM streams were at a time that was unavailable to you. It must mean you sleep late.
Well, I would sleep late when I go live with Dago for 8 hours, and the stream finishes about now, right? So that's why I sleep late. I work all night long usually.
All right, so I'm going to reveal the exculpatory evidence that's in the possession of Bethany Funk, that's also now in the possession of the public and has been now for some time. Okay.
All righty.
And so, what do we got in here? 118. Good. We got a bunch of users in here, so it's worth revealing. We've all considered that Bethany Funk saw something that would contradict Dylan. Even I've said that. The guy could have been black that she saw. He could have been short, could have been fat, could have had one arm, could have been wearing red. And this is where we've all allowed ourselves to go down a rabbit hole that just doesn't exist. Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence, folks, is what she heard, not what she saw. And that's why we're all fucked up and trying to understand what she may have for exculpatory evidence. Because we were never given anything to give us any clues to what it could possibly be. Is it what she saw? Is it what she heard? It's got to be one or the other, Jess. Now with the data,
doesn't there have to be some redacted communications between the two of them in relation to that Xana was wearing all black?
No.
Comment?
No, we're not going to consider that there is until they produce it. If there is, there may not be. There may in fact be from 3:51 a.m. to 4:19 a.m. no communication on either one of those girls' phones. That could be true. As a matter of fact, because they've released no text messages between that dark area, we have to accept that there was no communications until otherwise shown differently.
But Ann Taylor has said during the proceedings, Ann Taylor said they were active throughout the night. There were at no point did they stop. I can't remember her exact words.
I think what she was saying was that
I think she alluded to the fact that there isn't a period of time like what you just referenced, this 2 or 3 hour period of time where they could have possibly been sleeping. I think her point was they were never sleeping. They were up and on their phones from the time of the crime until the 911 call was.
Okay, and that's exactly my narrative. Mm-hmm. But now let me disclose to you exactly why Bethany Funk matters, why she's exculpatory. And it all comes down to the point that I've been pushing for the last several days, hoping others would catch on. The bottom line is that no matter what happened from 3:51 until 4:17 a.m., the initial acknowledgement of a crime in progress comes from Bethany Funk. And that's the exculpatory evidence to Brian Christopher Coberger, because her acknowledgement begins at 4:19. That's the exculpatory evidence that Bethany Funk can provide to the court. She was not alerted, nor did she have any other information, hear or see anything prior to the text she sent or the call she made to Dylan. And that's exculpatory because the state claims that the crime began at approximately 4 a.m. and the white vehicle, suspect vehicle 1, took off at 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. And Bethany Funk's testimony will show that the crime, in fact, is acknowledged at 4:19 by her, meaning that the state's timeline cannot be accurate, and therefore the car that they suggest sped away in connection with the crime cannot be connected to the crime, no matter if it's Brian Coberger or Jesus Christ himself. Because arguably and provably, with evidence that's electronic, the crime did not start until 4:17 a.m. And Bethany, it's her testimony that will confirm that. It's her testimony that fat fuck piece of shit Bill Thompson's kept secret from the public. And unfortunately for him, see, if this had been released earlier, what I'm sharing with you guys tonight, many of you would have picked this up maybe even before me. If this shit was shared and all of these interviews and these text messages and what happened that morning were shared 2 fucking years ago, what I'm saying today may have been said by someone unknown or one of you 2 years ago, if not myself. That the progression of events and the timestamps that can't be argued with show unequivocally that the crime did not start until 4:17 a.m. And there's nobody that can dispute that, whether they were on their phones or not. Unless the conversation from 3:51 until 4:19 is directly related to shit going on in the house, then whatever they were doing on their phones has nothing to do with the crime until Bethany Funk is like, what the fuck is going on? That's the indication.
She's the one that initiated the conversation. And in the beginning, that was not clear, but it has become clear since then.
And why did she initiate it? Because there was a disturbance of such magnitude that even she heard it in the basement.
And Can I ask you a question, Sarge?
Yeah, sure. That's why I got you.
Other creators are out there sort of shifting from targeting Dylan as a guilty party or having, just appearing to be aware of more than what she's letting on. And now the blame shifting is square pointed at Bethany. Like it in the beginning, it seemed like Bethany got a free pass because she likely didn't know anything, but it's starting to appear that Bethany might have been the more knowledgeable of the two.
Yeah, and I wanted
Any
to say
thoughts on that? Or
yes, is that I'm not going to. As information's come out, I don't know how long you've watched me on these streams, but as information has come out and added so that we have more to consider, my perspective of the crime has changed. Some things never change, such as no forced entry. It appears as if whatever happened to that home started in that home and ended in that home. I still think that based on evidence, but it may not be right. In this situation with Bethany, this isn't a theory, Lauren. What I'm sharing with you is a documented fact. What I'm sharing with you is what's been hidden from you for more than 2 years because the prosecution doesn't want anybody with the capacity to think talking about this, including Ann Taylor or anybody connected to this case. And that's why they had the case sealed. And they deliberately held from you what I'm sharing with you right now that actually had to be released. It eventually was released by Hitler just recently with the text messages. This shit was hidden from us. Or I swear to you, a lot of you would make this conclusion as well. There's no other interpretation of what Bethany witnessed that could be exculpatory to Bethany that only she could testify to other than that initial fucking phone call to Dylan. What prompted that is the issue that she'll testify to. And you could see through the call that something was going on. Fair enough. Something big.
So other than the fact that Bethany's got connections and with her family and appears to be the more powerful of the two, what's your explanation for why DM features prominently in the PCA and Bethany's not mentioned? Why are they hiding?
Nothing to do with it. These are streamers creating conspiracies that may have. There's no evidence to support that there's any connection between her and her family to this crime. None. And her behavior.
No, I'm not saying there's any connection to that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that she may have been being protected. Like, we're not going to make her testify. We're going to try and leave her out of it because her family lawyer got involved.
No, absolutely not. If you notice, they didn't even use her in the PCA because
that's what
Bethany's involvement in this prosecution. When you include her full involvement, it destroys the state's analysis of what happened. That's why they kept it secret, not to protect Bethany and her family. It's all about these corrupt policemen, the corrupt prosecutor that has, to the exclusion of all else, determined that this guy is going to be their perpetrator. No matter what is put in front of them, they're going to stick with Coberger. And anything Bethany did contradicts that, and that's why she was kept out. And Bethany isn't contradicting it because Bethany's trying to protect herself or the state's generous enough to protect her family. These people in that town, like in many different prosecutorial offices, are just cocksuckers that shouldn't have those jobs. This should have been released early on. We should have known, and there should be no ambiguity for any observer, that Dylan's testimony is the testimony that denotes the beginning of the crime. Her behavior shows the crimes start, not this nonsense of 4 o'clock, about 4 a.m. That's why they used the term about 4 a.m. That's why they stuck with Dylan, the drunkard, and used her to get these warrants and are using her publicly to cause all the distress. Here's the shiny ball. Look at this girl. And nobody paid attention to Bethany. Fair enough?
Yeah, no, Dylan's statements shouldn't even be considered, really. I mean, right after she says, I don't know if I was in a dream world. I don't know what's real and what's not real. And then 3 interviews down the road from that, she says, oh, you say bushy eyebrows? Okay. Yeah, sure. Bushy eyebrows. That shouldn't be allowed to happen that way on a third interview to be the power of suggestion to come into play.
Well, I hope that, let me see, I got something.
Were you streaming at this time last night?
Oh yeah, I stream every time. When I stream, it's at 9:00 at night.
And did Diego come and join you last night?
I think Dago did, yeah. And that was when I was talking about the corruption, showing actual corrupt policemen that stream like they're Mr. Know-it-alls.
Did he mention what we went over after you left yesterday?
To some extent, he did. He did. And you know something? Watching Lana argue with herself and acting as if she's trying to present an argument. This is what Bethany could say. This is what Dylan could say. This is what Ann could ask. Listen to all of that. And then I just find it like my whole concept of saying that the crime started at 4:17 a.m. was in the hopes of prompting people to see
what
that
I said about that play acting that Lana did. And I like Lana. I think she digs up some good stuff.
Yeah, I do too. I really like Lana. I like what she presents.
But the reason I couldn't get fully on board with what she was selling in that particular episode was because, like I said, she's sort of, I don't know if you would agree with this statement, but it does appear that Lana's blame shift, like pulling the blame off of Dylan and focusing now more on Bethany and sort of portraying Dylan. Poor Dylan was naive and didn't know what was going on, maybe even passed out. And Bethany's
that's kind of why I put the stream off, because I did realize that there are streamers doing that, and I think that they're doing it because they're lacking. They're not lacking data. They're lacking context, and they're hunting for context, and so they're jumping off into these other views of what these two women may have done. But really, the thing is with
about
Bethany
that
is
theory is we did hear Dylan on the 911 call, and she doesn't sound like the naive victim of Bethany's mastermind plot. She's taking charge and saying, "Come on, Bethany, we have to," and doing all the crocodile tears and all the, in the, I don't know how you feel about claiming that the 911 call was staged or play acting or whatever, but I'm firmly in that belief that those emotions and those statements were scripted or planned out, and they were very purposeful. And I don't think it was an honest reaction, what we heard on that 911 call. And Dylan was a very active participant in that.
Well, I have to say this, that now that I've given consideration to what we do have available to us for data, and it may surprise a lot of people to hear me say this, but I'm not so sure Dylan and Bethany had anything to do with this crime at all. I think what you witnessed in that morning is one person that's so aloof and so lost and confused in fucking life that the behavior you're witnessing from Dylan is who Dylan is. I think what happened that night, there's accuracy to some of her statements, and I think that her actions were consistent with who Dylan Mortensen is. I think who really knew what happened, not because they had a personal involvement or they had prior knowledge, but I think who really knew that something terrible happened was Bethany Funk, because Bethany Funk was conscious and she knew something terrible happened. And Bethany Funk is the one that was all fucked up and crying. And it was Bethany Funk that stayed in her room and probably wanted Dylan in that room as much for her own peace of mind as for Dylan's safety, probably more so for her own benefit. I think when you sit back and try to give them the benefit of the doubt, which I know a lot of people may not think I'm capable of that, but in this situation where now we can say this is going to be Ann Taylor, and this may be exactly why there's a stay on some of the shit with the grand jury that Hitler just issued. Just try to picture this, folks. Dylan Mortensen's testimony is valid to describe Dylan Mortensen's experience. A lot of you don't understand Hitler's ruling. She has every right, drunk or not drunk, to at least garble through what she remembers or even conceived happened that night. She's not identifying Brian or being used as a key witness. She's going to testify to the events that are known or that she could recollect that are personal to her. And there's every right in the world for her to make that testimony, drunk or not drunk. That's not going to point the finger at who did it. So I don't know why people are so hung up with Hitler's ruling on that. Secondly, now that we see the timeline's been released, you have to now sit back and say, okay, the crime started at 4:17. Digitally, we know that for a fact. And at 4:19, it prompted Bethany to call Dylan. So if Dylan is all fucked up and confused, of course Dylan didn't make any reaction to Bethany. Bethany made the first call. Bethany must have been sober enough or alert enough to know, holy fuck, what's happening? She initiates the contact. That's the exculpatory evidence that sat in limbo here for more than 2 years. And why this may connect to why Hitler just sealed or stayed the grand jury stuff. Because if this isn't being shared with the grand jury, then that indictment is bullshit. Bethany is the key to this. Bethany is got exculpatory evidence. And what could be exculpatory? If you all agree Dylan shit is bullshit, and I agree with that, then what could Bethany possibly present to a jury or present to the justice system that's exculpatory to benefit Brian? And it's the time of the crime. She couldn't see anything from the fucking basement, or who was in Zana's room, or who was in.
So the time of the crime would indicate that the white car speeding off is
irrelevant.
Is too early to be the perpetrator.
Absolutely not even a part of the crime.
Well, I was never compelled by the white car speeding off, anyways, because if you don't have anything that signifies whose car that is, you can't just say, well, it looks like it could be. Looks like it could be is right. It doesn't do much for me, and so I could care. I always could care less about that white and how fast it was driving too. Is as if that's an indication of guilt.
Like I said, there's 1,000 ways to connect Coberger. That car could have dropped him off. He could have been in that car with a driver that kept his phone and drove off with it, right? And then Brian could have met that car somewhere else.
They really leaned into that, like, oh, you see how fast that car was? Guilty, guilty.
But the information of the car, rather than get into the hole with the car, Jesse, there's no if, and there is nothing about, it's hard to, you don't have to believe anything, Translucent, but you have to accept the data is presented to you and make an understanding of it. And only when more information contradicts it do you then include in other words, you can't believe that she didn't stay in the house. That doesn't work. It is hard to believe, but you have to accept that she did, because the data given us says both of these young women stayed in the house. So
can I push back on that a little bit?
You got to accept that. Yeah. Will you have data that shows they weren't in the house?
How about statements from Chief Fry?
What did he say? Two girls left the house?
So when he was asked particularly when they were in the house, and he refused to specify. Because he was asked if the two girls, the original press conference, the very first press conference that they had, Chief Fry come out and make statements. The reporters were all baffled by how the 911 call could be at noon, and they were firing all the right questions, asking him to explain why that call didn't come in till noon, and they were asking him, were the roommates in the house? And he was very vague about what he was willing to say, and he corrected the reporters at one point. And if you analyze what he actually said, he didn't specifically say they were there during the crime, when they were there. He very vaguely said, Jesse, I said they were in the house.
But in the documents, it shows them in the house. We're concluding that they're in the house because that's what the defense and the prosecution have shown us. As to whether that's accurate or not, there's nothing to contradict that. In writing or in testimony, in any hearing or in any motion or in any discovery, there's nothing that's been shown us that can contradict that narrative yet. Now, it's possible, but again, it's uncontradictable that Dylan ran to Bethany's room. There's no contradiction to that anywhere, and nobody has a solid piece of document that can contradict it, so you have to accept it at face value. I'm open-minded. If there's some piece of evidence that shows these two girls were next door, down the street, at a hotel, or in the parking lot, I'll accept it. But until then, you have to take what you have at face value and not believe it. But that's the only data you've got.
I'm not out there making any statements that they definitely weren't in the house. I don't think I've said that. Okay. But I've said that hypothetically for me, it makes more sense to me that the initial reaction, trying to put myself in that situation as a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old girl in a house in the state that house was in, the knee-jerk reaction is to get out of there. And then there's other information that we can use to point toward indications of what they did and what they were trying to do. For example,
but
doors being left
document?
open.
But Jesse, there's no documentation to support what we think.
There is documentation that says the doors were left open, though.
There is. Now, only after and just recently are we aware of that. There's documentation that showed the bedroom doors were open.
Not the bedroom. I'm talking about the back slider and the front door to the house were open. I believe first sighting was people getting up to go to work that day said they noticed the doors were wide open, and I believe they stayed wide open until the police arrived.
Well, until that's confirmed in documentation, at this point, Ann Taylor has not made any statement to show other than to say that the bedroom doors to where the victims were located were open. There's no evidence that states that both the front and slider rear door were open. There are people that have been online talking about this or making this assumption or saying that some neighbor walking his dog makes this claim, but there's nothing part of this criminal case that has shown us those two doors were open. And here's what I'm trying to show people
in chat mentioning it. If they could provide us with some documentation,
no evidence
that would help.
But here's what I'm trying to get people, and you too, you're a hardhead. When you have data, you have to understand the data you have as it's presented and not add your thoughts, your feelings, or your beliefs. Try to make sense of it and wait for data to be added to it. As an example, we were told by Steve G that Hunter was called to force a door open. We now know that's a lie. We also now know that Hunter went into the house with Dylan and ran to the kitchen to get a knife. That was kept secret from us. We also know that the doors to both victims' rooms were open. That was kept secret from us for 2 years. And this is what I'm trying to say. We all had the understanding that Hunter's role in this was to force the door. And we were making our feelings, our beliefs, and our thoughts about that situation until we got data to show it's wrong. Do you understand? And that's what I mean when you try to look at data and think it through. There is nothing to contradict the crime started at 417. And you can believe or think whatever you want, but the data tells us one story. You have to accept it until countervening evidence shuts it down. So I don't know that the two doors from the front and back were open, and I will not even consider that until it's given. I don't know that Bethany left the house. The evidence is being sent to us or shared to us stating that they were in the home, and I have to accept that. Until
I certainly don't know that anybody left the house, but I certainly consider that a possibility.
And I think that, listen, I consider it too, but when I'm analyzing the facts, I will not allow my considerations to. In other words, I'm open to it, but I won't use that in trying to understand the data.
Well, what I said was my best guess is a lot of people said they left both the slider and the front door open so that the smell would get out of the house. And I didn't think that, like, if you've got those two girls in Bethany's bedroom scared and staying there with their phones and going on Indeed and doing all that stuff that is in the documents, I don't see them leaving those doors open to let the smell out, but because the doors also let people in, and I don't think they necessarily want more people coming in after what they've seen and heard in the middle of the night. It would make more sense that those doors were left open to allow people to come in and make that discovery, which would allow Dylan and Bethany not to have to call 911 and be the people on the scene reporting it to the police.
Right. I guess you see everybody and that's the one thing I'm always vehemently about is when people say they believe, because when you deal with data, there's no room for belief. I really don't care what you believe. I really don't care what your experiences are. They're not part of. In other words, when you take your own beliefs or feelings and impose them on data that you didn't collect, you're making a mistake. In other words, you're now crippling your ability to analyze this. Well, a lot of people are struggling with me telling them the exculpatory evidence that Ann Taylor is going to produce to the court that it's existed for 2.5 years is that Bethany is the alert to when the crime started. Bethany's behavior denotes the activity beginning in that home. That's the exculpatory evidence, which is a complete contradiction to the state's analysis, and not just their arrest warrant, but in their charges that they brought to the grand jury. In fact, the crime did not start 4 o'clock and end at 4:20. The crime, according to the dog, according to the struggle, according to the thud, according to the whimper, all started at 4:17 a.m. And within a minute and a half, Bethany Funk is contacting Dylan. What the fuck's going on? That is what Ann Taylor's argument. That's what's exculpatory. At this point, there's no other explanation for exculpatory evidence that you can ascribe to Bethany Funk other than this. And this is confirmable in data that's been given to us from phone records, not from the cop's opinion or from Ann Taylor's opinion. Video document evidence, recordings, audio recordings, and documented phone calls show the exculpatory data that Bethany offers is not what she saw, but what she heard and how she reacted to it. Those two events, heard and reacted, is exculpatory to Brian because it blows the fucking crime scene apart when it comes to the timeline. That's why it's exculpatory.
But is there anything stopping Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings from just scrapping the original timeline and crafting a new one?
Sure, there is, because then all the tracking of suspect vehicle 1 becomes nonsensical and ridiculous.
Which is exactly what we've been thinking was going to happen from day one, isn't it?
And so when you tell me what that car was doing at 3:26 a.m. or at 4:47 a.m. after the crime, it's not relevant.
I mean, haven't they already done that, though?
Wait, but this means you don't even have to simply argue it that much. If the timeline that the police are providing to us, claiming that was Brian's car, it can't be Brian involved in the crime, even if it were his car, because that car zoomed away in less than 3 minutes, in less than 1 minute of Bethany's Funk alerting Dylan Mortensen. You mean to tell me that he got out of his car and went in and killed these people and got outside in a minute? My point is, that timeline that Bethany can testify to destroys the entire case, whether it be the car, anything that they're going to present in court to try to impugn Mr. Coberger is dead on arrival because of the exculpatory evidence that Bethany will provide based on her experience that's unique to her and what she heard and how she responded to it, which we know is true because of the electronic footage in the phone, you see? Because
is it not true, though, that the state has presented evidence of several vehicles, which they call suspect vehicle 1?
Yes,
or tried to suggest that this was Brian's vehicle. And since some of those vehicles and some of the footage and some of the statements they've made about those vehicles has now been pulled from, they've said, oh, we're not using that anymore, that we don't think that's him anymore. Along with the in the PCA, it says he returned to the crime scene the next morning, and then they backtracked on that and said, but now we don't believe that actually happened. It seems to me that they've already displayed the fact that they're willing to just scrap things, call it irrelevant, move on, and make a new story.
Let me give you another twist here. The reason this information was withheld was because it would have ended all of the conversation that we've had for the last 2 years, Jesse. If we know the exculpatory data that Bethany possesses that's unique to her, we now know it because, and I'll pat myself on the back, because of my analysis of only paying attention to the facts given us. I don't impose my feelings. I don't impose my opinions. It's irrefutable, the data that they've given us that confirms the start of the crime, and it confirms Bethany's unique experience that only she can explain that prompted her to call Dylan at 4:19. Those are irrefutable pieces of data that I didn't invent and I'm not theorizing about. So everything else that they've kept us engaged with, they did that by hiding Bethany's role. Can you understand? That's what makes the state such a filthy bunch of fucks. Had we had all of the data, all of these
filthy bunch of fucks.
But look what they've had us do in these rabbit holes for 2 years. Linda Lane. Oh, look at the bullshit we've all experienced. And it's all because the government of Idaho, the state, the prosecution have refused to give us the full accounting of what happened with both survivors.
I would just like to put up my hand and make it be known right now, and I think chat will back me up on this. I have refused to participate in any Linda Lane analysis or any grub truck analysis because I find it just bored me to tears. So I refuse to participate in that stuff.
I would like people in the and I'm going to put a link in there. Jesse, do you understand what I'm sharing and how significant it is?
I think so. I mean, I believe that you're you're ripping
I don't
apart the
want you to
timeline. I guess my only criticism of destroying the timeline is, does the state care? Like, are they not prepared to
No.
just make up a new timeline?
They care enough to have hidden this data from us for more than 2 years.
Yeah.
And they've allowed everybody, and there's agitators online. There's the media telling you this and all these stories about
I've sort of been operating under the assumption that their timeline was going to get blown to bits for quite some time, just based on, just the suspect vehicle stuff. Because a lot of people have broken down that the routes that they say that these cars went, the times, and the time that the crime happened for a single perpetrator to commit, it was never that plausible that it was that timeline was gonna hold up.
Here's kind of what I want people to understand, you included. You should be vehemently furious with the prosecution in Moscow, with the law enforcement in Moscow,
in the United States,
hiding from you, forget beyond the country. No. The FBI in Idaho and Moscow specifically, you should be beside yourself that they kept Bethany Funk's part in this secret and let all of these fucking rabbit holes develop and let all of these false accusations and all the defamation against Coberger develop, all the way until this point where some jerk off named Sergeant Friday takes the data that they slipped out, that they didn't want to slip out, but that the judge allowed out, that now shows us with no ambiguity that none of these other conversations should have been part of this fucking story. The whole conversation should have been, Dylan don't matter, Bethany matters, and Bethany shows your timeline is wrong, and yet you people still pursued Brian Coberger to the exclusion of all else. All the other DNA samples you fucking ignored. We didn't know there was that many DNA samples for years. Now we do. All of this other information that's come on top of us should have been done in the beginning, and you wouldn't have had Linda Lane, Jesse. The whole conversation would have been different because it would have been about the facts, not about these fucking stories that all these streamers have made up about grub trucks and this and that and the other thing. There'd been no room for that. We should be outraged.
I agree. I'm outraged about, I'm not American, so it's a little bit different for me, but I'm outraged about the so-called justice system. I'm outraged every time I watch Judge Cannoni make a ruling. I'm outraged at the ongoing objection count in that trial of sustained versus for Hank Brennan and for Alan Jackson. But I do have I had a sports show that I was supposed to show up at, what was it? I was supposed to be on at 11:15 Eastern, and now they're pushing it up 15 minutes. So I'm going to have to go soon. But before I go, can I just ask you if Dago mentioned what we got out of the Dave interview when we reviewed it last night?
No. Go ahead and review. What'd you get out of it?
I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. And you did listen to the Dave and the Kim interviews way back in the day, right?
Somewhat, but not really. I didn't give Kim any credit because she wouldn't produce receipts. And I was very
Dave, both of them they were sort of telling stories about, that without really knowing whether we could trust or believe what they were saying, but they've sort of both been vindicated that everything they said sort of came to fruition, and it's now out there in legal documents and matches what they were saying. But going back to the Dave interview, he goes right in there about drugs, and he gets really into it. And for some reason, we didn't pay that much attention to it at the time, and I'm not sure why, but he made a few really interesting statements. He said that they would go to that house, 1122 King, to score all the time, and that it was absolutely known that you could pick up blow at that house. He said that you would go there and buy a few bags, and sometimes she would do a few lines with you. He didn't specify who she was, but some people hypothesize that he was talking about Emma Bailey, but Emma Bailey wouldn't be there all the time for that to be the case. It would have to be somebody who lived in the house. anyways, Dave was adamant about that. He described, he was trying to say, well, we're just college kids. We just like to party. We're not, this isn't something we do all the time. But the more he talked, the more it became clear that the amounts that he was talking, the kind of behavior that he was talking about made it sound pretty serious. And at one point he says, we would pick some up at about 9 o'clock, and then we would party. And around midnight, we might decide to score a little bit more. And then if we're really going hard, around 4 a.m, if they're still driving around delivering, we might score again. And I thought that was significant because Dave was this is a year and a half ago now, that this interview, maybe even 2 years ago. And he was specifically describing vehicles driving around that neighborhood, which, the green car theory. I don't know your feelings on that, if you dislike that, but he's putting vehicles in that neighborhood at that time for a certain reason. And it's like, well, now you're creating a situation where any vehicle that's going by that house, according to Dave, could be doing that, right? That's another reason for a vehicle to be there at that time. I thought that was quite interesting.
No, I think on the ground, people that live there may have information. I think like WSU Kim, okay, but she didn't give receipts. And now we have receipts. And this is kind of what I try to do with my audience, is to get them away from what they believe or their personal feelings and only look at the data available to us to see what it says without imposing any of our personal stuff onto the data. Take it for what it says. And that's really the process of thinking through data, rather than you've got to like I say, he's not innocent and he's not guilty. I don't know. But what I do know is the data that they've given me, when I do not impose my own feelings or my own personal animosities on it, tells a story. And that story is quite conclusively that the exculpatory evidence from Bethany Funk is connected to the 417 camera.
But would you agree that if you've got somebody testifying that there's that much drug activity and drugs being sold out of that house, that's exculpatory by way of potential motive?
Correct. And I think Ann may bring some of that together in the trial, but it's not relevant until it's actually documented and brought into the hearings and brought into the motions and brought into the process. So
Agreed.
These guys may know who did it. Let me just say that. They may know exactly who did it. But
who's joined us?
Case? Where is it in the Coberger case? It's not. Right?
Who
just joined us? That's Del. Say that again. What'd you say?
Hi.
Oh, hi, Delby. Hang on one second, Delby.
Yeah.
You know that you could take the name of the murderer right to Bill Thompson right now and he'd do nothing about it. You agree with it? Okay. So this is what I'm saying. All of these outside opinions of where the car went, who's in the car, what's on Linda Lane, who did this, who did that, what happened at the grub truck, isn't relevant to the charges in front of us. It isn't in the discovery. It isn't in what's in the court proceedings. So to me, it's a waste of time. In other words, looking at the data like I've looked at it and looked at it unbiasedly, not in favor of Coberger, not against Coberger, that data tells the story. The crime began at 417. Bethany's exculpatory evidence that they've kept hidden from us is right in front of our face, and it's not anything she saw. It's everything she heard, and it's her response, her physical response recorded on her phone to what she was hearing. That's the exculpatory data that Bethany is going to provide to the case that will show Brian Coberger couldn't have committed the crime as outlined in the accusations. That's why it's exculpatory.
I just realized I don't have to go for another hour. You're stuck with me for longer now, Sarge. And Delby, you're stuck with me too.
Hey,
now.
I can stop back some other time.
All right. Well, what's going on, Delby?
I don't know. That's why I logged in. I wanted to see what happened. Sounds like, did you get some news today?
Well, no, it's been news I've been hoping other people would jump on, and it's been news I've held back. It's an analysis that's data driven, that's unarguably accurate. And I was hoping, that's why I kept streaming on the screen. We know the crime started at 4:17 a.m. I was hoping other people would connect dots and say, oh, that must be where Bethany's exculpatory data comes in. And
Oh.
it is in fact provably that the exculpatory information that Bethany will provide is not even her mouth or what. It's definitely not what she saw. It's what she heard and how she reacted to it. It shows that crime could not have possibly began before 4:17 a.m.
Well, what did she hear?
Whatever she heard was enough for her to call up Dylan and then send a text. What the fuck?
Oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is an observation. It's an experience that's unique to her. It can only be talked to by her, as has been pointed out by the defense 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, you know, a lot of people are ignoring Bethany, but Bethany's part in this has been hidden by the state, because when you look at the data that's factually been presented, it's being done electronically. It's not the opinion of Ann. It's not the opinion of the government. It's absolutely unopinionated raw data from a video camera and from the actions of Bethany on her phone. Unimpeachable evidence. And because that unimpeachable evidence happens within a minute and a half of each other, that can only be the evidence that Bethany would be uniquely able to testify to. Her actions to what the camera was picking up at 4:17 a.m., the struggle, the whimper, the crazy dog barking, and the thump prompted her to try to contact Dylan. That's going to be exculpatory, because it destroys the state's argument that the crime started at 4 o'clock and a white suspect vehicle 1 tore away at 4:20 a.m. Not possible.
Okay.
Bethany's first response was at 4:19 to Dylan. That means the crime was in progress. The entire series of text messages are taking place while the crime is in progress. Therefore, that car could not be a part of it, nor could Brian Coberger be in that home during the time that these women are in communication, because according to the police, the crime was over at 4:20 a.m.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the prosecution has certainly done everything they could to keep Bethany out of this. So,
Yep. But now
they definitely.
Exactly what I said.
And they've done everything they can with the news stations and with the streamers on the internet to keep bringing up narratives that had no data to support them. Everybody's arguing about this car and about this and about that and about the grub truck and about the band. Nothing connected to the case. But that stuff kept getting fed into us, and millions of people have been discussing it. But just recently, they released this data on Bethany and Dylan's communications, connected with the release of the fact that when the camera picked up the event. If they'd have done that 2 years ago, I'm not the only guy that would have made this connection. Millions of people.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. And so they kept that hidden from us while we kept chasing the fucking shiny ball. Brian Coberger, grub truck, the this, the that, the doom. Meanwhile, the real issue here isn't who did it. It's, did Brian do it? And if Brian did it, does their evidence support Brian doing it? And the answer to the question is their evidence never could support it. And Bethany is the one that blows it out of the water. She destroys the entire timeline.
Hey, Sarge, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
So I know you don't think much of Lana's hypothesis that Bethany was a mastermind of sorts, but she did bring up something that was very interesting in her presentation, and I found it pretty significant, and that is that Dylan went through and texted all the roommates, Kaylee, Ethan, all that. Bethany placed a few calls, and when nobody answered, she didn't bother texting anybody. 0 texts from Bethany to any of the deceased. But she sent texts to many other people all night long and never texted the deceased. Do you find that significant at all?
We need to hear more from the 2 girls, but I think that, like I said, as more data has come forward and more of it is able to be daisy chained in a timeline that you can't argue. Information, though, the definition of what we may have thought about previous information is altered. I think it's highly likely that people are given a bad deal to Dylan, even me, in all fairness, even myself. But the fact of her condition from drugs and alcohol makes her behavior not unusual. Bethany's silence being alert that something horrible was going on, and her
I
shutting
don't think
down.
I've ever said that they actually did anything
No, that's what I'm
nefarious
saying.
other than just
her-
trying to keep it quiet or cover for somebody else.
I don't think that that's happening here at all. I honestly think these two girls behaved in two unique ways that are unique to who they are. I think Bethany shutting down in fear is what kept her, and Dylan being aloof and drunk and fucked up and not knowing really what was going on.
So there is in the court docs, Sarge, evidence of cleanup. We have seen that several times come up in the court docs. So based on that, if we believe there was a cleanup happening in that house prior to the 911 call, who do we believe is responsible for that?
I won't know. We don't know until that evidence. I didn't see any documentation of that, but if there is evidence of that,
I think there's an affidavit
from who?
From the defense's expert.
All right, so I'd like to see that. Now, that's likely that a cleanup was happening. It's likely that somewhere after 4:30 a.m. in the morning, those two girls fled their property. See, a lot of the things that you guys keep saying you believe, I don't discount them hand in hand, but you have to try to understand them in the context. And so the data that you have tells a story that you can't get away from. Come to my room.
I think that I said I believe it's probable, as opposed to, there's a big difference between saying I believe and I believe that it's most likely or it's probable, because
it's possible. It's possible. Let's get away from the word believe, because I slip and use it too.
That's really not true, though. That's really not true. When you talk about highly likely or possible or things like that, you're talking about the strength of your belief.
No, I'm not. Believing something is to the exclusion of everything else.
Well, no, that's not true.
Let me ask you,
Yes, it is true.
What's your name again?
Delby.
So we discussed before you came on about the drugs and how there's a guy named Dave. You're familiar with Dave, I guess?
Oh, the frat boy Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on what Dave said, there was drugs being dealt out of the house.
Not very much, though.
Well, I think if you go back and listen, that was my original belief, is he was downplaying it and saying not very much. But then when you really break down what he was saying, like, I think if you have a look at it again, it was more than not very much.
No, because he said that they thought maybe they got a bad batch, and he the way he said it, it showed that they re-upped about every week.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's not a lot of drugs.
Well, I mean, it depends on what your point of view is. For me, I don't do drugs. I've never done cocaine in my life. So for me, when I hear about buying it at 9 o'clock, buying more at midnight, buying more at 4 a.m., mixing it with Xanax, that seems.
That's nothing. That's entry level. Entry level.
Can I say, though, let me just interrupt you here, Jess, is that, look, I'm not saying that guy's data is false, but there's nothing accusing Brian Coberger, and even in his defense of the charges, that even brings that up. And that's why
that's kind of the point, though, because.
Well, no, that confuses looking at the facts that the courts and the defense are supplying you. They're not even.
But in any crime, if you involve drugs go toward a potential motive. Not certainly, it might not have anything to do with the motive, but the mere presence of drugs and the fact that they were present would certainly it makes you have to consider that.
No, not consider it and try to then define the crime through it. It's a potentiality that it's attached to the crime, but does not need to be part of the explanation of what we have. In other words, you're not supposed to weave in these potentialities to understand the data from the text messages or what happened that night. You can, on a big grand scale, say maybe drugs were involved and that's why all four were killed. Okay. But when you start reading the accusations specific to the case against Coberger, there's no real place to put that. Unless your argument is he didn't do it, the drug dealer did it. But you can't really make that statement.
That's my point. I find that exculpatory to Coberger, because he doesn't appear to fit with that. If the motive has anything to do with that, Doesn't
But
explain
it's
him.
if is the two letter words that lead us down rabbit holes. Here's the thing, Jesse.
But as a defense attorney, it's
that's
your
brought
job
up
to
in
create
court,
reasonable doubt.
but nobody is
And
doing that, Jess, except us. Ann Taylor isn't doing that as far
There's-
as we know.
I just want to say my position on this on Brian Coberger is that, in my opinion, there's no evidence against Brian Coberger, and cannot be convicted. I don't know who did it, but I would say he's innocent until proven guilty, so he's innocent. There's no evidence. There's no known evidence connecting him to anything.
Right, and
there
what
was
I'm
no
trying to do,
evidence against
Jess, is
Richard
show
Allen
people-
either, and he's in jail, right? He's been in jail for 5 years now.
2.5 or so, right?
Well, he was
Two
held
and
before he
a half
was
or three,
tried.
almost 3 years.
Yeah. So, but Jess, here's what I'm trying to say is that we often go down rabbit holes that may directly have connection to the crime, but aren't charged in the case, aren't being used as the case's defense at this point. If Ann's alternative witness includes drug purchases at the home, then great. That was a great thing.
Sarge, I'm a betting man, and I'm willing to bet that drugs are going to come.
Can
up
you show
eventually.
me how that bet applies to the documented text messages and the actions of these two girls at 4:17 a.m.? No, other than the fact that crime was being committed.
The cleanup could indicate that's part of the cleanup, getting rid of some of that stuff. Around the peripherals, what did you tell Adam? The fact that Kaylee is decided to leave and get away and completely change what she was doing. I think there's a lot of things that aren't evident. They're not proof of anything, but they're slight indicators.
Right. You're right, but because they withheld exculpatory evidence and because they didn't tell us about the crime scene for 2 years, we've been stuck with only that. And so we think that stuff matters. And what I'm trying to get you to see is none of that matters. Now that you have actual factual data of what we have, those other ancillary possibilities, even though they could, in one way, shape, or form be connected, they're clearly not connected at this stage in the proceedings. And where we are now with the proceedings, we've had 2 years of all of this outside opinion that's not relevant in fact. And now
think about all the redacted documents, though.
No, you're still trying to include things on top of documents that have cleared a bunch of shit up. A lot of the shit's been cleared up completely. What was the condition of the crime scene? Why was Hunter there? Completely cleared up.
Can I point out the obvious?
Yeah.
Can I be the one to point out the obvious? That operation, which involved more than drugs, as we've talked about, got small world software being bought and sold. And that's been going on for 20 years. These students rotate in and out. They didn't come in there and set up and take over the drug trade, in Moscow. They didn't come in and do anything. They came in and they were just another group of kids or students. And in June of 2022, the configuration became what we see, what we're familiar with. And don't forget, Ashlyn Couch she leased a room that she did not use, and that's in the middle of people, the owners of that property, 1122. You got one of them has properties. He likes to have properties near ports. He's always near seaports. Port of Lewiston, Port in Seattle. I think it's called Port of Seattle. I'm not sure. And he has properties always nearby. And the other guy, Scott Perky, has a front company called Small World Software that's registered at that 1122 address. This has been going on for a long, long time. The drugs, the criminal, you're looking at actual criminal syndication in Moscow, in Idaho. You got the highways, 95 and then 90s and what. I mean, this is all obvious. This is stuff that nobody even pays any regard to it. These are not gangsters that rolled in and took over the block or whatever.
I'm still trying to reduce this down to the simple stupid. All of these other potentialities, I don't object to considering them. Wait, I don't object to considering them. But the case against Brian Christopher Coberger is the topic here. And in the case against Brian Christopher Coberger, the only relevant information is that which is actually part of the case. That's all.
Which has to do with the victims. The victims have to do with the case, right?
But the victims' actions are documented. As far as the police, you have to take what they said, even if it's a fucking lie. That's what I'm trying to get people to realize. You're trying to look at all these ancillary potentialities that you can impose your view on what they mean to this case, but they literally mean fucking nothing unless or until they're part of the criminal charges against Brian, either in his defense or
See, that's not reality though. You're making
no, it is reality, bro. That's what's going to happen to him in court. Yeah.
No. The map, the map is not the territory. Okay, Albert Korzybski. You can look that up. Alfred Korzybski. The map is not the territory. You're talking about a map of a trial that has nothing to do with reality. It's
Can I point out something?
a map of a court.
I'd like to quickly point something out.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, you're sounding loud and clear,
Nick.
How are you doing tonight?
Who is that joining us?
Nick.
Hi, Nick. What's up?
Young woman.
Can I point something out, though?
Hello, Nick.
In regards to, could you just say that one more time, Sarge, quickly? What you, unless it's in the court documents.
The examination of what I'm doing on this stream is solely concerned with the case against Frank Christopher Coberger, both by the prosecution's information and the defense's. All the other stuff that you guys want to bring into it, listen, everything else you guys want to bring into it are nowhere to be found in that arena.
Okay,
is it part of the town?
That's suspicious in and of itself.
So you had said this before. You've been saying this for quite some time. I remember. However, we had lengthy discussions about Dave and Kim with Kim, about Kim and Dave, and about the 911 call, and we hypothesized till the cows came home about that 911 call. And at the time, it wasn't in any court documents, all the details. But when it did become available in the court documents, our hypothesis and our discussions were then vindicated, because everything we were talking about, most of what we were hypothesizing, it matched very, very close to what we now know.
Well, let me just, but my perspective on that all along with Kim was, there's no receipts, therefore it can't be considered up until the time is that it's provable. And now I've even apologized for Kim, except because she provided no receipts, we can't know that what she's saying is true. So I wouldn't consider it at the time as part of the understanding of what was happening, because you couldn't support it. Now you can. And now that they're actually out there, you can actually close circles on some of these squares that were being left open. The timeline now is very close.
But as an investigator, you don't ignore information because you can't vet it.
I'm not investigating.
I was going to say, you guys are retired police, right? So you have to take everything as if it could be an absolute truth. And then once you are able to rule it out, you know what I mean?
Who do you think's more like a cop, me or Sarge?
I think you're both talking with a lot of logic and a lot of reason, and I'm really glad I found this channel. I don't know why it took so long. This is actually my first time when you guys chat. So
neither one of us were ever cops, though.
No, I was never. Okay. But here's what I'm, Jesse. I'm not saying that there's no value to understanding it was a drug house. There's no value to not keeping in mind there was something happening at the grub truck. But everybody that's doing that is trying to close that data to connect it directly to the crime. I'm not saying there's no value in knowing that there were people on the Banfield, but if you're going to take the Banfield and impugn those people as the perpetrators, when the crime that we're really being charged with is against Brian, and there's no evidence connecting any of those other things to it, and until there is, I'll consider it only when it is. Just like with Kim, is what I was trying to say. I wouldn't give credence to her statements because she couldn't document them. Now that they've been documented, I give credence to a lot of what she said because I can see it as part of the case.
I was
the
giving
Banfield is not connected to this case
because it made sense to me. It was logical, and when compared to the PCA and the documents that we were being presented, and even still the documents were presented, a lot of them just they don't appear to be very straightforward. I think we're going to find more lies. Surely we're going to uncover more lies in the documents. And I mean, I'm not saying that we have that any of us have the right to take a story and run with it and present it as fact. But I don't think it's wrong to entertain information and try to vet it and try to use it to uncover a potential motive. And as far as the Dave interview and the drugs and if there was drugs all over that house, if somebody was dealing out of that house, I feel comfortable just talking about it as a potential motive, whether or not it has any significance to the case or not.
Yeah, I'm going to say to you that what's significant to the case has been withheld to us, and we should have a level of indignation that's almost palpable. They kept all of this data from us for 2 years.
I'm the only woman on the panel, so I have a question for all three of you guys, right? I'd assume you've all had multiple relationships, not just one. Not all of them have gone well, obviously, because, you're in the one you're in right now. So they had to go bad somehow. So taking that into as a probability, what I'm going to pose to you is this. If you were in a serious relationship and you came home from work early and you found your girl in bed naked with the window open, and you heard somebody jump out the window and run through the grass and jump in a car, and you found your best friend's wallet under your naked girl's butt, and there was a used condom in the bed, and she was trying to tell you, I was just selling him drugs. What would you think happened there? That's circumstantial evidence, and that's more than enough. You with enough evidence and enough obvious situational clues, you can garner a very
that is not, excuse me, but that's not circumstantial evidence on its face. That's actual witnessed things that happened. So what you're describing,
so you've got DNA and you've got something that
no, but wait a minute, you're describing an actual fact that I witnessed. That's not circumstantial.
I didn't say you saw your best friend jump out the window. I said you heard somebody jump out.
You found his wallet in the bed. She's naked. She's got a condom. I witnessed this. I heard someone jump out the window.
Well, somebody's dead in the bed with their DNA from somebody else underneath their butt that got left behind. Somebody could say, your best friend could say, somebody stole my wallet.
Well, how about the other 7 samples of DNA that are on a glove? They're on the knife sheet itself. There's blood on the knife sheet. There's blood under Maddie's nails. There's blood on a railing. There's blood on a glove. And you ignore all of that? Make sense.
I'm not. I'm asking, why is any of that there in the first place? And that's what you would be asking as a man if you walked in and it was that situation.
But circumstantial evidence is everything else that the state is trying to present to the public. When they say they have suspect vehicle 1,
so who did it?
They cannot identify that as Brian or his car. There's no way to identify it, and they admitted it on the stand under oath.
So who did it then?
Yeah, but in her example, though.
See, that's not the way.
Explain why any of that was in the first place.
Logic doesn't work that way.
In her example, the husband still has to take that final step that they were doing something together. Because
why was that there in the first place, right? That would be the first question in your mind, and that would be the one that always stuck there, that always stood out to you, is why was his wallet there in the first place?
Well, no, that wouldn't be much of a question. I mean, you see that in a condom, it's pretty much over.
Right?
I mean,
yeah.
But in this case, you've got a sheath with the most microscopic piece of evidence known to humanity. Wait, let me finish. Let me finish. We let you tell it your way. You have blood on the sheet that they covered with fucking fingerprint powder, and is now no longer discoverable to find out whose it is. You have blood on a glove outside the sliding door. You have blood on a railing. You have 3 samples of DNA under Maddie's fingernails. All unknown male DNA directly connected to the crime scene. So the question is, here's the question.
I think one is known.
Are all of them people involved in the crime or just Brian? Are all of them involved or just Brian?
Lord. All right.
I don't even find it interesting to say who did it, because
I mean,
this entire story paints a picture of something that doesn't make sense.
Well, I'd like to hear, she's one of those guilters that can't understand when you have 7 samples of DNA directly related to the crime scene. No,
Delby, was she a guilter?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell.
Absolutely.
I couldn't tell that she was a guilter. I'm not sure.
She's one of them people that she definitely cannot surmise the entirety of the crime scene. She only wants to go with that 1 sample of DNA.
Well, we don't have the
Well,
entirety of the crime scene.
I certainly disagree with the premise of if it wasn't Brian, who did it. I just
That's
find that not
nonsense.
very compelling
That's
because
nonsensical.
there's
Yeah.
so much information floating around this case that there's a lot more. A lot more needs to be explained aside from just who did it. Who did
Well-
it is even if you find out who did it, that still leaves a lot of stuff unexplained.
Well, but what I'm saying is Brian didn't I don't think he did it. I mean, we certainly can't convict him. There's no evidence. There's zero evidence. So let him go. But who did it? It's important to know
People
what
get
happened.
convicted with zero evidence all the time, though, as far as
Well,
I
it
can
could
see.
happen, but I'm just saying that, you know, from my opinion, my perspective, I don't think
I agree that I don't think we
did it.
see enough evidence that he.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
somebody-
So I want to know who did
Her
it.
story sucked because she constructed a scene under which there was no circumstantial evidence. That was direct information you're collecting as you walked in the front door. That's not
Start shooting.
circumstantial, right?
There's only one response. Start shooting.
Yeah, you go run to the window and unload your fucking 9 on the guy. Oh, did you hear this? Check this out. So the same situation, this woman comes home and catches her husband in bed, and she pulls a gun out of her purse. And he's like, no. She goes, don't worry. She places it to the head. You're next. You guys get it? The blonde?
Oh no. You're next. Oh my.
You're next. But look, I guess this is where I don't want to really bump heads with people, but all of these other issues and streams that people are combining to suggest they're part of the crime. I understand the potentiality of an infinite amount of people that were involved here that we'll never know. But I don't suggest that I'm going to weave a story to connect the grub truck people to the crime or the Banfield people to the crime, because I don't think Brian did it, which is what most of these people are doing. And in the meantime, as the facts have been released, and I've been continually sharing the facts and interpreting them based on the timeline, I'm not putting my own opinion. This is what the timeline says unequivocally. That matters more than paying attention to what happened at the Banfield. And it matters so much that they hid it for 2+ fucking years. And that really should make people feel outraged.
From my point of view, the question is not who did it. The question is, what are they hiding?
And we know right now they hid the entire aspect of Bethany's involvement, to which they're still hiding key details. But stupidly enough, the judge released information that closes a circle on that timeline that we can confirm. The 417 valid info that can't be disputed, and Bethany's reaction to what was happening at 417. You can't separate that.
Am I wrong to think, though, that with all the inaccuracies in the PCA, the way the grand jury played out, the shady behavior of the prosecution, the potential hiding of the advanced timing data, the way that they've dealt with this case from the beginning, it seems like they're doing a lot of shady things over and above what they would normally do just to get a conviction on a guy like Brian Coberger. There seems to be some sleight of hand at work for whatever reason. And in my mind, there's something bigger beyond just Brian Coberger. Something's being hidden.
Yeah, that's what I think too. That's
Right,
the part that
I don't
I'm
disagree with
interested
that
in.
at all. I don't disagree with that at all. It's either being hidden or to the exclusion of all else. Like I had that show in the cops last night and I put the police, there's a stream with 3 cops on it. And they're the epitome of to the exclusion of all else, just like that young woman that was in here. You have 7 legitimate samples connected to the crime scene, and the only one you want to say did it is Brian. I mean, that just makes you empty-headed or retarded. That's what I was telling you. The cops are retarded. There's no way you can't be.
Or conspiratorial.
Alternative evidence. Listen, that to me is more important than all the evidence of the Banfield boys, the grub trucks, all the other things that these streamers talk about. The fact that much fucking DNA was found and never identified. That's exactly how Amanda Knox was cleared in Italy.
I got some bad news for you, boys.
What's that?
The young lady that was just in here, the cops that you were talking about last night.
Yeah.
People like that find themselves on juries all the time.
Oh, and it's tragic.
Oh, I was on a grand jury for a year and a half, U.S. grand jury.
Look at that. Sweet
Wow.
and salty, not knowing about the other DNA for a year and a half.
So some of these people don't know anything.
I think she described what happened to her. She was cheating on her boyfriend and got caught in that exact manner.
She thought this was a therapy show. A lot of people would think that you're a therapy show for some reason.
I thought it was funny when she thought both Sarge and I were ex-cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I only know about Sarge, so I was like, yeah, I don't think so.
Well, see, it's because of that. It says, right, let me not hinder, let me not cause chaos and rumor, just a fact.
I guess Sarge has Sergeant in his name, so I mean that would explain why but I guess other than my hairstyle, maybe why would I be a cop?
See, now here's Kim Young's statement is legitimate, and I agree with that in as much as their data that they've given us does not add up to placing Brian Coberger in that home during that time. Does that mean Brian didn't do it? No. I could show a trillion ways he did do it, and a trillion ways that he didn't do it. And but the one way that clearly, and I've said this from the beginning, everything the police work did is exculpatory to Brian because it shows Brian couldn't have been there. And now when you look at the timeline and you look at the released text messages that the prosecution didn't want released because some fucking idiot like me was going to realize 417 and 419 are too close together to not connect, right? It's not like I'm connecting hours apart or miles apart. I'm talking about what happened in the house within a minute and a half.
Well, I'm going to come out and say that I don't think he did it. I don't think he could have done it.
I think there's a lot of ways you could show that not the way they're trying to tell us, but I think there are.
No, yeah, you might be right. But for me, if you commit that kind of crime and you get caught or you become a suspect, it's over. Because you make so many mistakes you don't know you made. And he's got OCD. He would have been trapped in that house. They would have had to drag him out of there. He'd still be going over the different. Oh, but I know I learned this in this class, and I learned this. I got to do it. I got to make sure that I reverse that, and then you can't. I don't see one person being able to pop in there and commit a crime like that, and when you get caught, there's going to be evidence.
You just reminded me. Thank you for reminding me. There's a viral video going around Twitter right now. Do either of you guys use Twitter?
X.
I do not.
X. Okay, X.
Oh.
Fair enough.
I use
so
it.
There's a guy in Brazil who's pushing his kid in a stroller, and some scumbag attacks him with a knife or something, kicks the stroller, and this guy just stabs the shit out of him, kills him right then and there. Somebody attacks him and his baby on the street, and you could see him just, with the knife. He stands up after getting that done, and he immediately grabs his hand like this. It looks like his wrist might be broken. He can't use his hands, just buggered. He can't use it, and that's one person. He took out one person, and his hand is completely fucked. And
a criminal.
Imagine doing that with 4 people in a condensed time frame. How fucked your hand's going to be?
Can I say this? Yeah. This is why they've baited us, and a lot of people have followed all of these conspiracy theories. That look, I'm not saying they're all fake.
This picture is absolute bullshit.
Right. But listen, all of these potentialities of the Banfield there's a potential these people were involved in killing these four individuals, but it's not part of the case against Coberger. That's the point I can't say over and over again enough. I'm only looking at the information that the courts are using against Coberger and the defense is countering the courts with. And in that scenario alone, those other situations don't have any room to be involved. Are they something that may be involved or you may want to know about down the road? Fine, if they became part of it. That's where I get a little bit different. My rails are completely connected to the case against Coberger. And I'm not trying to find or connect it to drugs or to child trafficking or to, and so I understand these other streamers like doing that, and there's maybe some valid information that they're finding, but where is it going to be used? And that's the catch-22. Even if one of these streamers came up with the name of the real doers, they're not going to get prosecuted. It goes nowhere. That's why I say trying to understand the people we should be really paying attention to is Bill Thompson. Is the Idaho police chief, is the state police and their chief, the officers involved in this case, the FBI agents. Those are the people that need to be under our microscope, not the grub truck. Right? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. Our real problem isn't these ancillary individuals in that town or even the amount of drug dealing coming from that house. Our real problem is the people that assembled this case against Brian. They're your fucking threat, because this drug dealing and other shit that you keep bringing up, folks, wouldn't exist if you had a proper fucking police agency out there, right? I mean, so what can we fix? We can't fix the drug dealing. We can't fix Emily Bailey. We can't fix any of these people. But if we paid our attention and streamed about the bullshit that these people have put us through, the lies that they've told about Brian, the misinformation about what actually happened that night, and put names to the people that did this, there's a chance these people can be moved out of their jobs and new people can replace them. We can do something. Something can change in that town, because, listen, the problems in that town are still there, whether Brian's in jail or not. Can we agree with that in this stream? Whatever problems were there before that night are still there.
Yeah. Well, and some of them moved out of town.
But again, the problems are still there with different names. No.
Okay.
And here's the thing: the people in charge of preventing and ending those problems are also still there. There's a direct connection that needs to be fucking fixed and called out. They had no business hiding what Bethany did that night from us for 2 years.
No.
I don't, that's what I mean. You're watching Reflections, you're watching this, you're watching that. Oh, that's all great and dandy, but why aren't we watching Bill? Why aren't we watching the chief of police and questioning and putting on fucking the hot plate a Maori and these other police officials that were involved, the FBI agencies that were involved, and who they are and what their history is and what cases they've been on, the kind of bullshit they pulled. This isn't the first time these people have done this.
They're good at it.
Right. They're so good at it that they wave a shiny ball and we all run to go look at the grub truck video. We all run to Linda Lane. We all run the Nightline to hear them impugn Brian. They're very good at it. And we're sheep. We just run and follow the shiny ball. Meanwhile, the people that are really our problem that we could really put an end to are being avoided and ignored.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't want my daughter in. It's like that Amanda Knox case in Italy where she was convicted of stabbing her roommate on transfer DNA. Every single transfer DNA case that's ever been overturned is because other DNA was present in the crime scene that was never identified.
Regarding the Amanda Knox case, intense media coverage of that case,
right?
And the internet still the internet still thinks she's guilty. I mean, a lot of people really don't believe she's innocent.
There you go. And this is what's happening to Coberger. And why? Because we're not questioning these officials. Meanwhile, these officials are lying to us through omission, and they're blatantly lying to us in documentation. Now they're saying Brian was by that house 23. 12 isn't enough. Now it's 23 times. And
you're right, because we don't know what Brian did. We don't know who did it. And we don't know really even how to start to find who did it. But we do know the people who have put on this whole facade and the cover up, basically. And you're right. It's Bill Thompson and on up the line.
And he's
those people we do know who did that.
He's a filthy scumbag that's doing everything he can to prevent Brian Coberger from putting up a defense. So he can get a prosecution and everybody can think that they're doing their jobs.
Sarge, I got
the last thing those people are doing. What's that?
I got something that'll make you laugh.
I don't know.
I know you're not the biggest Steve G fan, right?
No, definitely not.
And I don't think you're a Pavarotti fan either, because definitely everything that you're saying, he's the antithesis of that, right? He's heavy on the speculation. So Pavarotti put out a video today. Breaking news: he's busted the case wide open. He's exposed the leak.
Fucking time. Yeah.
He's exposed the leak. It's Steve G. And I mean, he's not kidding. He's serious. Yeah, he's got a video out there where he's like, I've cracked the case. I've got it. It's Steve G who's the leak. And I almost shit myself laughing that he thought that was.
And everybody that likes to talk about everything except for the officials in the case that want to talk about all these other conspiracy theories, they flock to guys like that, because people And I'm telling you, they don't know how to think. They believe a certain perspective, and they'll just like the cops did to Coberger, to the exclusion of all else. I understand that it's more than likely that drugs had something to do with this, but I'm not going to make the argument that they had anything to do with it because there's no evidence to tell me to do that in the case against Brian. And that's really what we're here for. What can we derive from the case against Brian? We can derive corruption on levels that's staggering within the community of their law enforcement and their prosecution. Their justice system is fucked. And they need to prosecute Brian. They need to prosecute Brian so they got something to hide behind. Do you understand?
Yeah, he's a prosecutor. We talked about that. We talked about that before, right?
Yeah, they have to get this kid guilty because otherwise Bill Thompson and everybody else are going to have to answer the question they've been hiding from the whole time. Who did it?
Well, and they have to take the heat off the university as well.
And see that entire clan up there. And the bottom line is, that's why I'm out here pushing people to try to stay away from these outside, these Pavarottis, because our problems is not, it's not who did it. It's how they've gone after this one American citizen and how they've lied to us and how they've held back exculpatory evidence and how they've let the news media and leaked information to destroy this one man to cover their own ass is what this is for, right or wrong. Those people are the fucking problem. They're as guilty as the actual people that wield the knife, that Bill Thompson and these other people there. You agree with that?
Yeah.
No matter who killed them, they're directly responsible for their inadequacy, their ineptitude, or their out and out corruption and cooperation with whatever crime is in their district. Whether
and the problem is there is just no consequences for these prosecutors, for these judges.
There would be a true crime paid attention to what matters instead of trying to run around with Pavarottis.
Yeah, well, anyways, the chat is asking about Steve G, and I guess it's funny because we all knew that Steve G was the leak, but the point is,
we all know that. I've been after him for
Steve
years.
Steve G is just one link in the chain, right? It's who. The question was never, was Steve G the leak? The question was, who leaked the information to Steve G?
Right.
Because he didn't stroll into the police station and get the information himself. But Pavarotti,
not just that, but who gave him that version of events, or was that his twist on what was given him? He came out one night and said, these people that are focusing on the transfer DNA don't know what they're talking about. There's more DNA. There's DNA on a sleeve. And I shouldn't even have said that. What he meant sleeve, what he meant was sheath. Because a knife sleeve is a knife sheath.
Well, look at his description of the 911 call. His description of the 911 call was blatant fabrication. And I don't know who fabricated it. Did he fabricate it?
Hunter's behavior is a blatant fabrication.
Was it was that relayed to, I mean, if he was told that story by anybody, he should be asking some serious questions.
He's not asking questions because he wove that tale himself.
Well, then he's a slimy son of a bitch himself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
He wove those tales, and everything he's told the public has been a lie. Everything. With the only truth in it, Hunter did go in the house. There was blood on a sleeve. It just happened to be the knife sheath that the fucking cops covered with fingerprint powder, making it unfucking usable. Right? He's right. There's more DNA there. And he made us think it was all connected to Brian, and not a single fucking piece of DNA that's legitimate DNA, a blood sample, any of it connects to Brian. Everything he's told us is a lie.
Yeah.
So Steve,
he did an about face. And, I wonder what they must have came to him and said, just because you haven't been arrested and all this stuff doesn't mean that we won't do it. So, pick a side.
I'm besides myself against the officials. Look, it's the corruption in our nation is not in Washington. It's everywhere. And we, the people, need to start focusing on that and stop running down these fucking rabbit holes with these streamers. Like that Pavarotti came out of fucking nowhere. And a lot of these guys, they all got these theories of who did it. And I'm telling you, folks, that is an inaccurate. That's the shiny fucking ball they're making you chase. These streamers that are doing this are making money on it. Some of them are too stupid to know that they're helping the fucking criminal prosecution and doing what they're doing because they're keeping their attention off the people that really deserve the focus.
I think they don't care.
Of course they don't. It's money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm drowning in money. I
So,
don't need your fucking money.
whose
folks. I
worse
don't
are
want your money.
the
Huh?
drunk turkeys or the Pavarottis?
Both of them on both sides of the coin. And they're doing
Neither is
everything they
worse
can
than
to
the
keep
other?
our focus off the real problem here, which is the state's case against Bryant, because the people that present the case are a bunch of fucking retards. That's the issue. We need to get the retards out and bring the fucking non-tards in.
Well, I'm not real impressed with the defense myself.
I to some extent, the defense is an uphill battle, but I think Mr. Hippler is starting to come around the bend and realize, especially now with this, I'm telling you that he's reviewing the grand jury stuff. There was a stay on the grand jury stuff.
Well, has he granted the ex parte hearing? That could
I
be
think
huge.
that happens on the 21st.
I think it's a little bit too early to throw the defense under the bus, Delby. I think
I'm not throwing them under the bus. There's a lot of criticism for them. It's all documented.
Well,
It's not throwing them under the bus.
I understand that, but we don't really know what their strategy is. So
It has nothing to do with strategy. She a lot of times Ann doesn't even know what she's talking about.
I want to answer this question because it was answered in the stream. So give me like 2 minutes, guys.
Okay.
What evidence does Bethany have that's exculpatory? The evidence of Bethany Funk that's exculpatory and can only be explained by her is at 4:19 a.m. she responded to Dylan with a phone call because of the commotion that began at 4:17 a.m. These pieces of information are facts that have been released by the state and the defense. 4:17 a.m. is a camera where 4 significant things took place that are unarguably part of the crime. And within a minute and a half, Bethany is contacting Dylan. And it's that action itself that's the exculpatory evidence. Her action to what she was hearing, not what she saw, but what she heard and how she reacted to it with trying to get info from Dylan, is the exculpatory evidence that Bethany will end up testifying to, and that Ann Taylor is going to build her case around. That the timeline, as illustrated by the police, including the movements of the car, are irrelevant because the crime did not start until 4:17 a.m. and continued on throughout all the texts those young women had together until 4:37 a.m. Long beyond when they claimed that white suspect vehicle 1 drove off. That crime was in progress while that car was in motion, and it maintained it being in progress for 17 more minutes. And maybe beyond, because Murphy barked for as many as 30 minutes from 4:17 forward. So between the barking of Murphy, between the camera picking up a thud, the camera picking up a whimper, the camera picking up a struggle, and Bethany's immediate response to Dylan about what's going on, is the exculpatory evidence that Bethany will testify to. And she cannot not testify to it because this is documented electronically. And there's no way to wiggle your ass out of that. And we should have known this 2.5 years ago. Not now. So that's answer your question, Love Tina. That's a summation of what Bethany's exculpatory data will be for the court. All right.
I was looking forward to asking Delby to.
He's here. He's here.
Can you just let me know? Can you give me a specific example of a grave error she's made or a big mistake, something she said that you?
I'll be right back.
You mentioned sometimes she doesn't know what she's talking about. Can you give me an example?
It doesn't have to be a grave error. I mean, you're taking it too far and trying to make the trying to put me behind. You're trying to throw me under the bus now.
No, I'm not trying. No. Whoa. Let me explain myself. First of all, I haven't made a determination yet whether the defense has been, whether it's an adequate defense, whether I don't know what her plan is. If she doesn't come, she's got to show something. She's got to show me that she's been playing coy for me to think that she's doing an adequate job. I suspect that she might be playing coy, but I don't know that yet. So I have made no determination to the competency of Ann Taylor. I'm on the fence. So it's not that I'm trying to throw you under the bus. I will say that I think she was duped by Bill Thompson, intimidated into giving up his speedy trial rights, because I think if they had gone to trial immediately and not delayed, it didn't appear that the state had anything, or they were it appeared that Bill Thompson was bluffing and she got had. I will say that. So that being said, in a capital murder case, I don't know if you can take those kind of risks.
She must be really familiar with Bill Thompson, though.
Yeah.
So it seems like she would know what he was going to do. She's gone along. She's, for one thing, and I'll get to a specific example. She goes along with everything the prosecution brings up, no matter how ridiculous it is. And a specific example will be a cell phone company, the telco. Your phone doesn't have to report back to anything. In this country, you don't have to report back to anything all day long. And when she lets them say that his phone stopped reporting to the network, it makes him look suspicious, and they play on that, and she just goes along with it. The truth of the matter is, the telco is in control. It takes control of your cell phone. The software does, and it's in control, and then it lets go. Now,
but isn't there a time to make that argument? It seems that I hear what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying, but I just think.
Oh, but it gets worse, though. It gets worse when she has stated multiple times in the court, in hearings, that Brian's DNA was on the sheath. The sentences she speaks say
got
that.
to acknowledge the evidence that's being argued by the prosecution. She has to
She doesn't have to agree with it.
But that's the argument being made.
I think if she came right out and
said
I think she's opening up a big can of worms if she doesn't, like Sarge said, if she doesn't acknowledge it and if she appears to be a conspiracy theorist, I think that would blow up in her face. I think that the time and the place for these kind of fights to be taken up are during the proceedings, during the trial itself, and like I said about playing coy, if you let them know what your strategy is before it happens, you give them so much more time to prepare and counter your strategy. If you pretend to be dumb and be like, yeah, his DNA and the cell not reporting, you don't tell them that you know better than that until it's time to pull your cards out. And I'm hoping that that's what she's doing.
Yeah, but look at the 2.5 years plus that the media has used all these things to make Brian. I mean, there's no jury pool that's going to be unbiased against him. You can't let the other side have anything.
Well, I don't think she's going to win at trial if a jury has to make a decision based on trusting her evidence or the state's evidence. I think the jury is always going to decide with the state unless you can blow it right out of the water with some, aha. You need an aha moment for Ann
Well,
Taylor.
they can, and she should have been doing it all along. That's my complaint. It should have been very easy for her.
To be honest with you, I'm just not sure if you can.
Blow their case out of the water? There's no evidence.
Oh no! I think you can blow it out of the. I think you can blow their case out of the water, and I think that's your only chance. When I said I don't think you can, I don't think you can just expect a fair trial and go in there and present a solid defense and create reasonable doubt and prove that they don't have enough evidence for a conviction and just hope to get a fair result based on an intelligent jury that's going to weigh the facts accordingly. When you have jurors like the guy that Turtle Boy interviewed, and he said, well, why would you think that Karen Reed is guilty? And he says, well, I don't know. She was there and he was there and they've been drinking. So,
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that interview?
No, but I'm familiar with
the Karen Reed trial.
No, I'm familiar with the cases that I was in. I was in probably over 200 cases, and I know that
as an attorney or as a
juror, in the grand jury, U.S. grand jury. I see. Yeah. So
and so when you're selected to be a member of a grand jury, that's like a job that you continue to do over is the same people that act as grand jurors all the time.
It's 1 day a week for us. We did an extra 6 months, so it was 1 day a week for a year and a half, 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And is this usually just people like members of the Chamber of Commerce in the town or the community, people of good standing in the community that go on a grand jury?
oh no, it's very much it's like going to Panera. You know what I mean?
A bread restaurant?
Panera. Yeah, it's the market there, the people who go there. It's
Okay.
at the middle
Just
mainstream
mixed
America.
bag. Just a mixed
Huh?
bag? A mixed bag of people.
They're very ordinary. You know, they're sort of in the middle of the road type people. They're not extraordinary.
School teachers and bus drivers. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
And
But
that,
what
and
I was
that
going to
crowd,
say, what I was going to say is that they're very resistant to anyone taking a side against the government, against the prosecutors. And so,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
that
That's
group
what I'm
of
saying.
people,
That's
yeah,
exactly
you
what
I'm
have,
just saying, supporting what you're saying.
you have to be able to break your information down to the simple stupid with a group like that.
Gentlemen, I
that's
want to
right there.
thank you guys for having me. I want to say hi to Mama Bear and Translucent and Alicia and SRB and everybody in chat. I got to go. Thanks for having me. Good night, guys.
Good night.
So, yeah, and anyway, I just and it's a struggle. See, it's always an uphill struggle, even with people that I know and I enjoy their company, to get them to focus on just the data that's available, that's verifiable, and not walk off into these.
It's not. I don't agree that some of the data you're using, I don't agree it's verifiable.
Well, I think the video and what they heard on that tape is part of Ann's already began this argument with the timing of 417. She's already started that argument. I'm pointing out that Bethany's exculpatory information is consistent with that argument because we have proof Bethany used her phone at 419. And that's when all of the chat went on between her and Dylan about what the hell's going on. So
Yeah.
that's those points are, as far as I'm concerned, written in stone, and you're not going to change them. They're accepted by both the defense and the state, and they're electronically
but
produced, so they can't be tampered with. They are what they are.
Okay, but it changed once already, didn't it? Didn't the facts of this change?
Not on that video at 4:17 a.m. No, sir, it's never changed.
I don't know about that, but some of the other things in the 911 call,
That's not
the 911 call.
That's different. That's not included in the point. And the points that I'm making, I'm pointing out Bethany's exculpatory information is right at that moment.
Okay.
And then in the 911 call, are there missing blank periods of time? Yes, there are. Are there statements made that are confusing? Yes, there are, because there may be something missing. But that doesn't change the estimation that the data given us in the order it was given, even if there was something said between 425 and 427 they didn't show us, that doesn't change the point of Bethany's. What's Bethany's exculpatory experience here?
Well,
right?
I think I understand why I've been having a hard time following you in this is because you're focused on the Brian Coberger trial, on Brian Coberger in the trial.
And the case again.
I'm focused. Yes. And I'm focused on basically everything else. But where we do have some crossover in that Venn diagram is the fact that we do know Bill Thompson, James Fry, all these people, they need to be investigated.
They're the problem.
Yes.
See, and this isn't, I'm not saying Bethany knows all. And this is an important distinction between what I'm trying to show people and what I'm trying to help you guys understand what he just explained. When you have a timeline that's that tight, and you have a witness that's been ignored and mitigated and kept secret, which is Bethany, and then you start getting data on Bethany, you very quickly should be able to assess what that data is telling you, knowing that Bethany has a unique experience that only she can testify to, and it's exculpatory to the defendant, has to be somewhere during the commission of this crime, folks. I mean, that's not a hard conclusion to make. She couldn't have observed something yesterday or the day after. Fair enough, Delby? So it's easy to take data and think about its significance, and you have to place it in a timeline of significance. So when you do that, you now know almost 2.5 years later that Bethany's unique experience is what she heard and how she reacted to it. Even Bethany can't lie about this.
And as far as the trial goes, you're absolutely right. The only thing all you can use is, the documents that have been filed.
And argue against what the state is claiming that Brian or someone in the suspect vehicle 1 got to that home at between 4 o'clock and left at 4:20. They keep trying to move it forward. They've gone as far as 4:30 now, but the facts show the crime began at 4:17 and went on beyond 4:37. And the audio captured by a video 50 feet, a video camera, surveillance camera 50 feet from the home, shows a dog barking at or about 4:17 and continuing for as long as 30 minutes forward. It's unarguable proof that something was happening at that home beginning at 4:17. Bethany replies or tries to contact Dylan at 4:19. Therefore, you have a correlation of data that's irrefutable that tells a story. As far as the grub truck and the drug dealers and all the other stuff, it's got nothing to do with what I'm pointing out. And if it
nothing
does,
to do with the trial. Nothing to do with the trial.
Yes, and so when you analyze the trial data as it stands, it tells the fucking story. It tells you. Look at. If I would have had all this information 2.5 years ago, I promise you, what I'm telling you tonight, I would have told you back then. I promise the whole world that. There's no way I would not have come to that conclusion. As a matter of fact, for the last week or so, folks, you guys know that I've been pumping across my stream, hoping other people would catch this. Why was I saying, look what's on the banner now? Why was I saying this for over a week? Look at that. Killings began at 4:17. I was trying to see if other streamers or other true crime members would catch the significance of what this is, how it would connect to Bethany. Because when you look at the text messages, this hour of the AM directly relates to Bethany's actions. There's nothing else in any of the stories that you've heard, grub trucks or any of that bullshit, nor is there anything coming from the court that tells you what Bethany did that night except the text messages. Therefore, they hid them fucking things from us intentionally.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And isn't it interesting that between the leak to the media to disparage Coberger and the release of these texts, there's all of a sudden different hearings popping up, and there's a stay in relation, Tomboy knows what it's about, in relation to the grand jury information. There's a stay on that. And all coalesces around literally the release of the texts about Bethany Funk. Because people thinking about the data from the court only, people like myself and hopefully people in the audience will understand the significance of those two times, 4:17 and 4:19. That's what's unique to Bethany Funk's experience that night. It's not what she saw, which is what we were all trying to figure out. For right, Dylan or Delby?
Yeah.
You know, everybody's claiming she left, she did this. We're all putting things on her that we have no evidence to support. What I'm putting at her lap right now is 100% supportable by the evidence that's going to be used.
And I think you're right about one thing. I think you said something important earlier in that, or maybe I'm adding to it. I'm adding. You said that, we definitely need to go after these corrupt officials and politicians and police. What I would add to it is that's probably the only way that you're ever going to find out who did it, is just to start with these people. And hopefully after you get enough of them in, that they'll give up, why they're doing this, why they're covering it up.
And I want to say this to folks. When I look at this data, I try to give even the police the benefit of the doubt. And I want to give Bethany the benefit of the doubt. Her family connections and what her family does or does not do, I do not suspect has anything to do. Here's what I want you to start to focus on, folks. The people that released this information and withheld this information from not just the public, but the defendant himself for 2+ years, that now when it's being released, I guarantee you, when I'm sharing you, Ann has been appraised of and has had that eaten at her for 2.5 fucking years. Ann's probably been like not being able to sleep at night knowing this. That their timeline can't be possible, that their own witnesses show you it couldn't be Brian. Not because of what they saw, but because of what Bethany heard. Because what the camera heard proves their timeline cannot be applied to their client. No matter what the fuck they wanted to. And what they've done is they've hidden that from you. And Ann Taylor's had to live with this, as well as Brian, and as well as the other people in part of his defense. They've had to live with these pieces of data. Not even, imagine not leaking that. This is crucial, this information in the timeline. And they've had to sit on this shit for fucking more than 2 years while the state played all these fucking games in the public. I'm telling you, he stalked them. Right? He posted a picture, shows you, look at, that's the face of a murderer with his thumb up. That kid, if you sneeze, that fucking kid would run the other way. To me, that picture is exculpatory evidence. I see that guy as much of a threat. Jesse would be a threat. See, if I was in an argument with someone that I thought could get violent, and it was Brian Coberger, I wouldn't even be nervous. I wouldn't be looking to punch him in the throat. I'd be looking to slap him and make him. Jesse, I'd be looking to get his eyes. I'd be looking to get his throat, get his fucking balls.
Who's Jesse?
Right? The guy who's Jesse? The guy that was just in here, Jesse. He's a big dude. I mean, I would not face off the guy, but my first thought is, do I get his eyes, his throat? What do I get first? Something that's really going to cause and incapacitate him, because he's a big dude. He could crush you.
You can tell a lot just by the way somebody walks. The way Brian walks, you can tell he's not a good. He can't be a good fighter. Let me go back to that. I brought it. Did you see my last night's stream where I went after those cops that own a stream out here? I don't think I know.
Police off the cuff is the name of the stream. And these guys are they're criminally negligent. Let me just say that. They're as criminally negligent in their view of this case as Bill Thompson and all the other people involved in prosecuting this case. I suggest they're criminally negligent because their own story doesn't make sense. Their own witnesses contradict it, and their own witnesses don't contradict it because of what they claim they saw. It's contradicted because of what they heard and how they responded to it, which is unimpeachable fucking evidence. You can't now say, well, Dylan was drunk. Like, everybody's attacking. You see how they got us all to go after Dylan with this, and everybody focused on Dylan? But the key to those text messages is the key to understanding Bethany's role, which is still confusing. I can't explain everything, but I certainly can say with confidence that 417 recording on that camera is what she was responding to, because she was hearing it in real time as an occupant of the property. And she responded to it by trying to contact Dylan. So that information should have been part of the public atmosphere for more than 2 years. And these people involved in that case should all be held to account for it.
Well, Bethany's Boise clique from high school, you know, they were all very much involved in this. I mean, they were involved with the people. You know, Jack Showalter is part of that group, and he was one of the last ones with them. Bethany, Jack Showalter, and Dylan, and those three for sure. And Dylan and Bethany are both, knee deep in it. So Bethany's, she's definitely in the mix.
Well,
so
that may be, but again, trying to connect that mix to the crimes where we're losing focus from the people we should focus on, which is, as I repeat myself, and I think that's the only way to teach people. They got to hear it over and over again, or they're not going to get it.
Yeah, they have to hear different ways.
Is the judicial system in Moscow, and that includes everybody in the police department, the FBI agents that work with them, the investigators there, the prosecution, their law clerks, everybody in that fucking system, including the judges, are more of a problem to that community. And because of them, that community suffered those 4 murders. Because even if these murders are connected to the grub truck, the Banfield, or any other fucking story these streamers have, it only does connect to those other things because these people don't do their job. Whether it's for nefarious means or not doesn't even matter to me. The fact of the matter is they don't meet the level of qualification to protect the community. Therefore, they shouldn't be in that position. Now, if they're profiting from it, covering for a college, covering for a drug, I don't give a fuck. The murder of these 4 kids tells me more than I need to know. These people should not be there, should never have been there, and they need to go.
Yeah.
That includes Hitler, that includes Judge, that includes all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not enforcing justice,
definitely.
they're not protecting the public. And I don't really give a fuck who Scott Jennings is or the president of the college. I don't give a. Those people should be exposed if they're criminals by the people that I'm pointing out that aren't doing their job, which is why they're not being exposed as criminals. You see? So no matter how you wrap this, it all comes down to the inefficiency and the outright internal systemic corruption in the justice system within that community of Moscow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what our focus needs to be, not fucking some guy with bushy eyebrows. That's bullshit. Some guy in a white car. Fucking bullshit.
I agree.
No, not Linda Lane audio. I am not and am not absolutely not talking about Linda Lane video. I'm talking about the camera that was 50 feet away from Xana's bedroom on a neighboring home. It's got nothing to do with Linda Lane.
I mean, we know half of the people involved in this crime because they're all officials. They're all Bill Thompson, Fry, are incompetence.
And that's what I showed last night. That these police agencies are systemically corrupt. And they're systemically corrupt because the training. Look what Officer Payne, there's proof in how this case was handled, how he was assigned, and how he was given information and told to use that he himself never analyzed, investigated, or confirmed. That's systemic corruption. That's not how you're supposed to run an investigation. And yet he did.
Yeah. And nobody corrected him.
Nobody. Well, because the people, you're right. And it's like getting in a training car your first day and the guy drives 55 and a 30. He's already showing you you're above the law. And that can't be allowed. Our police departments need to be the epitome of following the law. Right? It needs to drip from them. If it says walking speed, 1.3 miles an hour, they ought to have a fucking meter on their arm as they walk. They should be the example, not the exception. And the police around this country have turned themselves into the fucking exception. So have the prosecutors and so have the judges. That needs to be fixed. And this case is a great one to get it fixed in. But nobody wants to pay attention to that. They all want to pay attention to fucking Pavarotti.
Yeah.
Right?
One thing good about Pavarotti is he's keeping those people off the street for a couple hours every night.
But look at the millions of man hours that could have been thrown at Maury, at Payne, at fucking Thompson, at Jennings.
Yeah. Millions. Yeah. Yeah.
That's millions of man hours.
That's what I've always wondered. Looking at just looking at YouTube and YouTubers and how it goes, is why people don't track down more of the things like we're talking about, like Bill Thompson's history, and it's there's a lot of public stuff there, and other people.
I could say, in all fairness to true crime, I'll say this, and I may be right, I may be wrong, but I think I provide a unique observation to true crime that goes a little bit beyond what's normally happening in all these other streams. I think I'm taking a perspective that shines the light in an area that we all know and say every day is corrupt, but never pay real attention to it. And that's where I'm trying to push the viewer to understand. We are the government. We can make a difference here. And not all police agencies are bad. Not all judges are bad. There's a lot of good people out there trying to do the right thing and accomplishing it every fucking day. But when you look at the Go case, you look at the Delphi case, you look at the Karen Reed case, you look at this case. This is 4 of probably hundreds of jurisdictions that are run by people that shouldn't even be allowed to walk your fucking dog. And they're presiding over life and death of fellow citizens. Only we can fix that. We the people. This isn't politics. This is just common fucking sense. I wouldn't want Officer Payne in charge of trying to find a killer. If God forbid, my daughter was killed, I'd want that guy nowhere near that case. What about you, Delby?
Yeah.
And I'm glad you
Sue,
do. And I
Steve.
think you understand. I think you understand my perspective. Where in fact maybe well definitely you didn't really understand. And I think a lot of people misinterpret me. They think I'm just like an asshole, and I am, but they don't understand the points that I'm trying to make because they don't give it a minute to think about it.
Well, it's taken me some time and effort, and also I've learned a lot about the case. Okay, and so I'm beginning to understand your perspective, but yeah, and it makes sense to me. But there are still some things that I have some, you know, that I would want to talk about sometime, but not now.
For since I look at, I'm not. None of the streams have ever approached it from the perspective that I'm approaching it from, and I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. What I'm saying is they're missing a boat that we should all be on.
Oh,
I don't have
definitely.
any objections. I don't have any objections to knowing what that community is made of, what the community's failings are, what individual citizens, shit is being dumped into among these college students. Like, for instance, one of the things Americans don't know is you're literally putting your kid's life in danger when you send them to a higher learning institution because the drug cartels target the fucking areas because that's their customer.
Yeah.
Right? So even a good kid could end up dead or fucking maimed or crippled or fucking mute.
And they do. A lot of good kids.
And they do. And Americans don't realize the danger that exists around their colleges. We're aloof to it. We don't know. We know things happen like this at colleges, but we don't know about all the things that happen. It's not like a major news story. And it should be. And people are paying tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to educate their kids. Kids are taking out loans that bury them. And they're putting their lives in danger the very minute they step foot on those campuses. And it shouldn't be that way in this country. Right?
Exactly. And the students have no ability to deal with that kind of situation. And it's like we're talking about when they make them a CI. That should never happen. They just don't have any ability to deal with that. Almost nobody
does. They're
not
telling the parents. They're not telling the parents. Their kids were arrested and they're a confidential informant. They're putting the kids' lives at risk and the parents have no idea. I know the kid doesn't want a criminal record, but I don't think that should be an option the police should approach the student with.
I would never be a CI. I would never do it.
No.
And I've been around all that stuff quite a lot, and I don't know if I could fit in or not. The thing is, having it in your mind, just knowing that you're a CI, people can see that.
And even if they can't, if the wrong person does, you're fucking done.
Oh, it's over.
Not worth it, man. You know what?
Oh, hell no.
There's something to be said about doing the right thing, and that will prevent a lot of problems in life. The majority of problems, because most of your problems are self-created by you. You put yourself in that corner. I'm not saying that the young woman was raped that came out of the club drunk is the problem. She's the victim. But again, if we try to teach people to make the right decision, and I don't have an objection to you getting blind fucking drunk, and sometimes you do it in the safety of your own home and something bad does happen. In that situation, there's nothing you could have done to change it. But you always try to make the best decision for yourself first. And that way you're of use to everyone around you and you keep yourself out of danger. That doesn't get taught. Right? And these poor kids are going to these schools, these four young individuals, whether it was drugs, whether it was a guy with a bushy eyebrow, they're dead, they're gone. Their light is gone.
Yeah.
Their light has been extinguished.
For some of them, they got arrested for a little bit of marijuana or selling some marijuana.
Right. Yeah. I made a lot of bad choices. I'm lucky to be alive. I was shot at, attacked with a fucking butcher knife, in fights, robbing people. Then I'm even alive. In all fairness, those four kids should be awake and alive, not me. That would be a fair world. Okay. And yet the world doesn't play fair. It just isn't. It isn't the way it works,
no.
Right? Look at those guys.
No, it's more and more predatory every day.
And two guys died in Kansas City having a party that they've had with their friend for years. A couple of times for many, many years since high school. They'd get together and they'd do things they wouldn't normally do with drugs. And two of them froze to death in the backyard. And and the streamers want to pay attention, attack and impugn and accuse the survivor. And the whole way you could see clearly it was they got a hold of something in their drug. And the two guys that died outside were because they went outside after they used the drug and they passed out and froze to death. The third guy,
The guy that passed out in the house lived.
and he passed out on the couch and lived. So, but the facts were there for everybody to see, but 99% of the streamers were attacking the survivor. He did something to these people. And not realizing the situation spoke for itself. Yeah, Thomas, Kansas City 3. The situation told the story. The facts were there to tell you a story that made more sense than any other analysis, and nobody wanted to hear that. They wanted to blame the survivor. Like they blamed in the Donna Eyes case. They blamed the cop. They blamed the hospital. In this case, I'm blaming cops. But in the Donna Eyes case, the cops didn't do it. The cops went above and beyond what you would expect from a cop. She needed a ride. She got a ride. And then she asked to be dropped off at a certain location, and they dropped her off. No questions asked. Oh, the cop shouldn't have done this. The hospital shouldn't have. And everybody jumped on the officials. And the officials did exactly what was requested by that young woman. That young woman wandered off, got drugs, and ended up dying and was found outside, dead. That's not the cop's fault. That's not the hospital's fault. It's the choice of the person herself that caused her own demise. Just like the Kansas City 3. The choices those 3 men made resulted in 2 of them dying. Not one of those 3 tried to kill any of the others. Their choices and what their activities were that night resulted in their death.
They all it appears they all partook of the same substance.
Right. And they all had the same results, but 2 of them happened to be outside when they became incapacitated and they froze to death. But here's the point in that. It's not, and I think people mistake me. It's not that I'm trying to show people how right I am. I'm trying to say that if you review the information as fair-minded as you can and draw conclusions from the data in front of you, it's generally the most accurate. Take it for what, of course, about drugs, about fentanyl, these guys, you heard the story. They would go there a couple of times a year. There was just a Super Bowl. They were there partying. You heard the whole story.
Their team won.
Yeah. Their team won. And same thing with the Donna Eyes. The whole story was given to us. And from just being fair-minded, you would say, and just like in the Coberger case, like I keep pointing to the officials, there's our problem. Now, as to whether Brian did it or not, I can't say, but I can say without much doubt that based on their assessment of events, he didn't do it that way. Okay? He may have done it, but he certainly didn't do it the way the cops are telling us he did it. Fair enough?
Right.
Because I can't know if he did that, right? Like those other 2 cases, the results, and then what the investigation and the autopsy showed. And you can understand it after they did all of that. You can understand it before they even did that. In this case, you can understand there's 100 different reasons why people may have went in there and killed them 4 people. But you really can't put your finger on any one of them reasons and say this is it.
Oh no, not at all. That's the problem. Is that are you're probably familiar with the 3-body problem?
The what?
In the 3-body problem, it's a famous problem in I guess physics or astronomy. If you have two large masses, like say 2 planets, that they'll get into sync in some kind of rhythm, one circling, one orbiting the other, or however they work it out, they'll work it out. But if a third comes around, then there's no possible way for it to ever settle into anything. It becomes chaotic. It's a 3-body problem. And what I see in this case is that, when you might be making some progress and start to understand the case in a certain way from a certain perspective, but then suddenly some new piece of evidence comes up that's from that other narrative. And so now you're pulled to the other narrative. And there's at least 3 or more of these base narratives, you know what I'm saying? Like, right. And people just can't, because we can't control the information we get. So we're all bouncing around, except for you, but the rest of us are bouncing around from storyline to storyline because we don't know what happened. I mean, so
No, and we
you
try
know,
and listen. I think people are smart enough and they're trying to make sense of the nonsensical, and a lot of people come up with good ideas to make sense of it, but it has no bearing on the case. And that's why I say sometimes the streamers like the Pavarottis and well, your friend Tommy Jude with all the chaos he put people through, there's no value to it because it has nothing to do with the proceedings. And in the end, we'll never know. That's the worst part here. And I can say this with a high level of confidence. Whether he's convicted or not, we're never going to know who committed this crime or who they were or who it was. Because at this point, we can basically all agree that the story that they've told us as it's slowly unwrapped beyond their control isn't a story that's valid. You
well, now
can't
there's
make
too many stories.
brown logic. Go ahead.
There's too many stories. There are too many stories that you can make a case for up to a point. And so how do you prosecute somebody for one of them? It's the three body problem again. It's like how do you prosecute somebody for one of these stories when you got two others that are just as good? There would have been somebody else.
It's got nothing to do with
Oh,
money
atomic.
being they are supposed to start with the most likely to. It's look, any blood in that house at that point in time would be connected to the crime scene. When you find blood on a glove, and this really to never ends will really always haunt me. If you're going to swab a button snap for DNA and then find a glove with blood on it and not turn it inside out and swab the living fuck out of the inside of that glove for transfer DNA, then you shouldn't even be in law enforcement.
No, shouldn't be.
How could you not
Go out there. They can go out there with pain, keeping an eye on the phone booths for us.
Well, I wouldn't even want the guy watch a phone booth. But here's what I'm saying: if you're gonna go into a crime scene recklessly with people in windbreakers and do all of that shit, and then send a forensic team in on the second pass and find shit your team didn't find, and then your find is a microscopic skin cell, right? And you're going to tell me you cannot just identify that, but that means Brian committed the crime? Someone needs to give your grandparents a slap for mating, okay? You ignorant motherfucker. I'm not buying it. But here's the worst part. You've demonstrated to us in some way, shape, or form that you have the capacity to collect microscopic fucking evidence, and you don't attempt to do that from the one place where there's no way you couldn't find an abundance of that, and that would be the fucking glove. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that fucking contradiction in fucking reality, you deserve a slap the likes of which no man has ever endured. I don't buy that. I won't accept that. And you actually presenting that to me, your teeth are in danger when you're talking to me. Stand back, because I'm not going to accept that kind of happy horse shit.
No, that's criminal negligence, like you were saying.
Right.
And this is a death penalty case. That's what I said about Hitler calling expert witness testimony in a subpoena for the defense, calling that evidence a conspiracy theory. I mean, the guy's sitting right there in the courtroom. He's facing the death penalty. You know, it's crazy.
There is a logical way. We're 6 degrees of separation from each other. Brian is known to have been in that community now as many as 23 times. In the same supermarkets as the people that did the forensic examination, is the people that walked through there with windbreakers. In other words, Brian went to the same familiar places that the investigators had been. Therefore, they're the transfer fucking point. They picked up Brian Coberger's DNA and carried it in there, unbeknownst to them, because it's fucking microscopic.
But there's no proof that Brian's DNA was on that sheet.
Well, let's just say that it was. What I'm saying is, because it's transfer DNA, it can be brought into the crime scene by the investigators and they would never know it.
Yeah.
Because it's microscopic, right? Now, I would be more content with what was in the glove. That you couldn't transfer someone's DNA into. But a movable knife sheath, is a fucking problem where you got people walking over that fucking crime scene, going up the stairs, going in the rooms, doing this, taking pictures, doing that. There's room for the transfer DNA to be a microscopic particle to come off of you and land somewhere. How about the person that actually took the sheath out of the baggie? How do we know they weren't connected to Coberger in one way, shape, or form? My point is there's reasonable understandings to how our DNA gets where it gets. And I bet you I could have Hawaii. I could have DNA in Hawaii, and I've never gone there. I could have DNA on airplanes. I've never been on an airplane and flown anywhere, but my daughter did. My ex-wife did. My transfer DNA was on that plane.
Yeah.
But I was never on the plane.
But I mean, it's like what Thomas is saying here. That's kind of what I think, that it just never was on the sheet to begin with, the DNA.
That's true too. Here's the other thing too, and I know a lot of people don't like hearing this, but my gut is telling me that based on the limited facts we have surrounding the FBI's involvement, that no matter what you guys in the chat room think, it's more reasonable to consider that they had their eyes on Brian at the level of the FBI, not Moscow. And that observation or interest in Brian Coberger was what prompted them to give them the name, with this happy horseshit with the transfer DNA and how they identified it. But a labs that specializes in doing that couldn't identify him.
Right. Yeah,
that's why I come to the understanding. And it's just, like people theorize about stuff, but I'm not theorizing about grub trucks. I'm theorizing about actual parties to this proceeding. And that their identification of the DNA, I don't think was legitimate at all. I think
we know that's what they were doing.
Because they had a vested interest in him from previous issues, whether he was ever talked to, interrogated, or approached. They had him on some radar somehow, some way. And when they realized he lived 10 miles from this crime, that's when the FBI said Brian Coberger. And even Officer Payne himself was never told by the FBI that they found his DNA. They just gave him his name. So there's something fishy there with the FBI and that name Coberger.
Oh, for sure.
And now the police ran with it, and they tried to build a scenario to trap Coberger. And now we have Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence that sinks their ship. They're running the Titanic, is what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Cloth Rod is saying it's the FBI. It's something. I don't know what it is, but there's a lack of information here with the FBI's involvement, but enough information that they produced his name, nobody else. And they couldn't have just pulled that rabbit out of their hat. And I can't believe that there was enough information for them to search down Brian Coberger in a database somewhere. I can't accept that. I think it's bullshit. And I think that rabbit was pulled out of their ass and just thrown at Moscow because Brian was someone they were concerned or interested in. And now the kid lives 10 miles away from a quadruple homicide. They gave the name. Yeah. I think if the truth comes out, I may be wildly wrong, and I accept that. But to me, that's the most reasonable understanding of the data we've got.
Yeah, I think this Kimberly Lindsay's right. Was she saying? I mean, is Kimberly Lindsay she just had a comment up from chat? Yeah, that one. It's basically saying the same thing you're saying.
Here's what a lot of people are saying, and this is that, well, his name didn't come up in the Pennsylvania case until after he was arrested in Idaho. No. That's the way it's been delivered to us. In other words, that's what the media has told us. That's what the reporting shows us. But that does not mean Brian Coberger's name wasn't part of a grand jury inquiry. These guys can sit for 6 months while they're running an investigation.
Yeah.
And the guy's name would never be publicly known. Never. But yet, after he was arrested here, all of a sudden now he's part of an FBI fucking grand jury or some grand jury in Pennsylvania connected to the FBI. That's too much of a coincidence to ignore the suggestion that they had their eyes on him for something unrelated to the Idaho 4. It could be wrong. But I've been pretty accurate all the way through this. And what would happen with the PCA? How was exculpatory? Where was exculpatory? And I've been right in all of it. And I think people are going to have to admit that the Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence I'm right about that as well. It's in the timeline, and it's very self-explanatory. It's hard to ignore. Once you see it, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
After the bolo. So we'll see how it turns out with the FBI, but I also think it's the FBI that's leaking and driving these narratives with the mainstream media. I do not think it's Moscow. I think it's somebody connected to the FBI, more so than it would be somebody connected to Moscow or even Steve G.
Yeah. It's getting late for me, but yeah, I think I definitely understand what you're saying, and it makes more sense to me now. And yeah, I think I agree with actually more than I thought I ever would. But this is late for me. I'm just too tired to carry on. So thanks for having me
Well, that's
on.
all right. Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. And I'll put the link in there. Yeah, I guess I'm a hard guy to understand, but it's not like I'm not trying to share rocket science. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to get people to focus on something that's focusable.
The problem is that there's so much confusion in this case, and there are so many things missing, and it's really hard to get a handle on it.
It is, but I think that's because we're looking down hallways that may never prove relevant and may prove relevant.
Yeah.
Right. And in this situation, I'm looking at what's really the only relevant data that we have that we can refer to. And I'm saying the relevant problem are the officials. That's a big problem here. That's our main problem.
They're definitely a big part of it, if not the biggest. Well, they're the biggest part. They're the enablers, basically. They allowed it.
And they help. Look at it. The media is out there trying to push the narrative of the fucking law enforcement. They're not trying to look for a middle of the road understanding. They're not considering anybody but Brian, to the exclusion of all else. That's why I had that cop stream on here last night. It's like they don't know there's all those other samples of DNA. And if one microscopic piece is convictable, then the other fucking shit should be, those names should be derived and they should be in the firing squad with Brian.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. That's what I was trying to tell that girl earlier. That one microscopic piece enough to kill this guy. What about the other evidence that are actual blood? Why aren't we finding out who they are to kill them alongside of them? Because clearly, if DNA proves the crime was done by you, then it proves these other people were involved. That's logic.
Yep.
So, all right. Have a good night. Thanks for coming up.
Okay.
And, stay out of trouble.
I'll try.
I booted them. That's what we do when we can. That the program and how it's faulty. And then, okay, so somebody said something. Again, the fish rots from the head down. Somebody said something in here about DNA. I want to back up a little bit and see what that comment was. Again, whose DNA are they hiding? I don't. According to Bill Thompson, they didn't test it. There are no lab results to provide on this other DNA. Can't give you what we don't have. Right? And they sent the FBI to a DNA expert's home after she testified at a hearing. The FBI has got their asses open on this one. Their asses wide open on this. And the courts have done everything they can in this case to protect the FBI from their own fucking fraudulent criminal behavior that I assume is criminal, but should be labeled criminal because to the exclusion of all else, they're protecting the FBI and their interest in their actions in this case. And that should never happen. I don't care if you're writing a traffic ticket for a fucking American citizen, an assault ticket, a robbery ticket, a burglary ticket, or a murder ticket. There should never, ever be the ability to hide one law enforcement's participation in this. That's why, folks, I'm so animate about the FBI's involvement or concern or interest in Brian before this ever happened, this particular crime. And I know the argument of timeline of when we became aware or when they started talking about this took place only after Brian was charged. And in January, they started talking about it. But I'm suggesting to you that that's not the first time the FBI had eyes on Brian. And that doesn't mean he killed these people. Doesn't mean he committed any crime or did anything wrong. But I think it's hard not to draw a line to the FBI for a lot of the chaos here, including the leaks, including the information given to Steve Gonzalez through a third party, I suspect. And I think it's all driven by the FBI, folks. This entire case has been driven by the FBI, and that's being hidden from the greater public. I don't know who's going to take who's going to take Brian's money from the commissary fund. I'll send Brian money if he don't got no money in his commissary fund. What does he need? $100 a month? I'll send it to him. I don't give a fuck whether he did it or not. I think what really, there's so much more involved here. Let's just say Brian did it. That still doesn't give what the state and the government has done in the press, in the media. That still doesn't give them the right to make up timelines, the right to make accusations, the right to ignore other evidence. That's still always going to be a fucking problem, whether this kid's convicted or not. And I think that's something we can all agree on. Whether he's convicted or not. That law enforcement, that judicial system in that area is fucked. I agree with that to some extent. Yeah, this is just unacceptable. I agree with you, Yvonne. It's just fucking backwards. Yeah, well, let SG, he can come take my commissary fund. That guy's been either used like a pawn, okay, or he's so fucking blind and ignorant that he can't stop himself. And I don't think that's true. Yeah, the first one, Sarge. Yeah. Well, they put an awful lot of work into framing this kid and trying to convince the public that this mysterious vehicle of 2 different fucking years, 2 different models of the same vehicle are all one car. They went to an awful lot of fucking trouble to push this knife sheath when in fact the coroner's report or the autopsies, fuck the coroner, that mob butt. The autopsies will tell us whether only and to the exclusion of all else did a K-bar commit these wounds on these four lost young people. Right? Yeah. Brian wearing a black hoodie proves he's a criminal. Brian putting his picture in the fucking with his little thumb and his little fucking 4-ounce hand. His little anemic looking fucking face. He's a mass murderer, this guy. Wiped out 4 healthy young fucking. Kaylee herself could have kicked his fucking ass. Kaylee herself could have kicked his ass. Maybe Zaina could have kicked Brian's ass straight up, even if he had a knife. We need to get Sarge away from the drunk turkey. I don't have anything to do with the drunk turkey. That fucking guy, he's doing what he's doing because he gets coin. I call him a peasant. He's a present paying on the susceptible masses, which are you guys. And I prefer not to do that. I prefer to be a part of the fucking mass and share information and try to share a perspective that may be helpful to people. And I'm doing it because I'm doing it for free. You guys are actually helping me by coming into my stream. You're helping me vet information that I've collected. You're helping me understand timelines and things that otherwise I would have nowhere else to discuss it. You're doing me a favor. And I don't want your money. That's enough. I don't care if there were 20 million people listening to this stream. I don't want your money. But I do want your opinion. I do want to argue. I do want to banter. I do want to laugh. I do want to discuss. And all the things that we do here. Right? And like that woman, Nick, N-I-K. She probably came in from that channel, that police channel. If you walked into a fucking house and your wife's in bed and she's naked and there's your... That's the kind of girl that... I don't even know. She would act surprised when it lands in her eyes, but it doesn't burn because it's been there many, many times before you ever did it. Fucking Sarge. Oh my God. Where did that broad come from? Unbelievable. Tell her this fucking story. She doesn't know what circumstantial evidence is if she was fucking surrounded by fucking mountains. I really want Brian's shirt. Hey, Kimberly caught it. There you go, Kimberly. Yeah, I mean, come on. That shit burns. Not to that girl. She's used to it. Well, he should be doing that now. Right? Thomas, he should be doing this now. I dare Steve to listen to one of my. I dare him to come and contradict what I'm telling you guys about Bethany. He can't. I dare Bill Thompson to come in and contradict what I'm showing you about Bethany, and he can't. Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence is simple. What she heard, she responded to. It's unequivocally true, based on electronically collected data that can't be disputed. That's the exculpatory evidence, what's unique to her own experience, that only she can testify to. It's got nothing to do with what she saw. And there's none of these people. I guarantee you, Ann Taylor would pat me on the back and say, that was a good catch, Sarge. I wondered if anybody was going to catch on to that one. And that's what we need to spread through the public, these other streams and streamers. Because, let me just say this, folks. This is the best part about this analysis. Even if it's wrong, it's only wrong because there's data missing. If, and I hate using that word, but if the data collected is all the data available from 417 forward and from 351 to 417, okay? If this is the kickoff point, which it must be, the dog confirms it. I mean, Murphy is on my side here. The dog is on my side. The video camera's on my side. And Bethany Funk's actions are on my side. And all of us should be sharing this in other streams. If there's a hole in this analysis, let these other so-called investigators, who they all think they are, show the hole in this fucking analysis. And they won't be able to. And it will never have a hole. It will never have a hole unless the assemblage of this data is incomplete. That's the only fucking variance to what I'm sharing with you. There's no other way to interpret what I'm sharing with you because that's the only evidence you have to interpret it with. So you should rest assured that as of right now, on this particular day, at this particular time, in this particular century, in this particular moment, you understand what Bethany Funk's exculpatory information is. You now know. It's no longer hidden. The public needs to be made aware of this. Share this with other streamers. And that's the timeline. The timeline of events prove Bethany's experience that only she can testify to. And rest assured with Dylan, I had a whole scenario under which I could make Dylan look guilty of the crime itself. A lot of you know that know me. And I've slowly been assembling the data, and as data has come, I've modified, changed, deleted entire concepts of data that when put in order looked that way, but then when more data was added, it just destroyed it. It didn't look that way anymore. Which could hold true here. It could be true that it didn't begin at 4:17 a.m. It could be true that the exculpatory data is not Bethany Funk's actions in relation to 4:17. That could be true. But until it's disproven, it is not untrue. It is the most true data that I can actually supply to you. Right? All of these people down in the MPD, that whole the judges and everyone else that did the investigation of this crime, they're as big of a problem and as much of a threat to that community. There you go. Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I don't, you can't really answer questions like, why did the MPD clear him? We can't answer that. We can't answer any of the other questions. And he didn't drive them home that night. These footage of them walking, either he's lying or the footage is not from 11/13. Can't be. That may be true, but we know that they were eventually home, right? Vildors, Dar, I don't know how to say your name. Oh man. So it's been a good stream. It's 11:44 Eastern Standard Time from what was once the great state of New York, which is still New York. It's just not great anymore. Bethany hear voices that she recognized, see people that she knew. Well, even if she didn't, it wouldn't matter. See, the fact is that specific, if that is relevant, we'll only know later. But the relevancy of what we do know are that she took actions at 4:19 a.m. that are unique to her experience. Something prompted that action. And that is the exculpatory data. That action itself. That and the video camera of 4:17 a.m. That is what Anna's been trying to say to us for a long time and couldn't come right out and say it to the public because it was kept behind a gag order. And even now, she will not put these facts together because to some extent, that direct piece of data that I've put together is still protected by a gag order of which I am not a part of. There is no gag order for any of us to take the data they've given and make sense of it. An alloy is, brass is an alloy. Brass is a combination of, what is brass? Hang on one second. It's a metal alloy composed of copper and zinc. It's got 55% zinc and 55 to 95% copper, and the remaining percentage is zinc. And this, I'm glad I looked that up. This is why, folks, that DNA dies in contact with brass because of the zinc. Zinc, okay, is very deadly to living organisms. They put zinc strips on roofs to prevent algae growth and other materials from establishing life on a roof. They put zinc strips on a roof. Brass is made from copper and zinc, and it's the zinc that makes it destructive to DNA. So a metal alloy would be zinc and copper, meaning that it would be made of brass. Stainless steel may also be. Let me see what stainless steel is made of. Nickel, molybdenum, and magnesium. So other kinds. Stainless steel is made primarily from iron and carbon in a two-step. So stainless steel then has ingredients added to it to make it resistant. But the construction of the stainless is the base materials are iron and carbon. So technically not an alloy. Where brass is absolutely an alloy metal in that you've used two or more different common metals to create brass. So for people know, zinc is very corrosive to genetic material. They add things to steel itself in the mix of the steel to produce stainless steel. And medical may be even more different than just the common stainless steel. But those are really the only two materials used in those button snaps. It's stainless steel and or brass. And brass is yeah. Well, I'm glad Daniel's earning money. It's a shame Daniel doesn't put any real fucking thought into what he's saying. And he just wants to elaborate on what he's told to say, Yeah. Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence found in documents that have been released to the public after 2 years of waiting. 2 years of waiting. We'd have understood 2 years ago. It doesn't look stainless. No, I'm telling you, it's most likely brass. Is everyone just screwed to say who the killers really were? Genuine question. Well, I don't know who the killers really were, and I don't think there's anybody on the stream that knows. Honestly, I just don't think it's knowable, except for those that did it or the one that did it. Those are genuinely the only real accurate sources of data. If somebody confesses, or if somebody is arrested and confesses, or some piece of information is brought forward that proves undoubted, like even with Brian, I've said it all along. Take out the transfer DNA and show me how he committed that crime. That's the circumstantial evidence that they've been trying to assemble, surrounded it with cameras and surrounded it with images of a car and pings from a fucking phone. That's all the circumstantial evidence, right? Yeah, it's all speculation. We don't know. We probably never will know. I'll tell you, you guys want to. I think this is probably the only way to solve the crime. And the only way to solve the crime is if the fucking scales of justice are turned on those people in that fucking case. Okay? If they had to face the scales of justice, then people would sing like fucking canaries. I'll tell you that right now. I'll tell you that right now, folks. There's no way. And let me just tell you something, folks. Can I just say something else? An honest lab would never have swabbed a brass button snap. And here's the part that really is the most fucked up part of all. This is another reason why this whole case is a lie. The exterior of the snap, of the button, the exterior of the button is covered in enamel. And the only way to make that button snap is to put your thumb firmly on the fucking button and push with force, leaving behind oils and transfer DNA on the fucking button that's covered in enamel. And these stupid motherfuckers, rather than swab it for DNA, decided they were going to look for a fingerprint and then swabbed a brass button snap for DNA. That entire series of events is not just ignorant, but undefensible. Undefensible in the fucking extreme. That button is so small that the ability to recover a fingerprint that you could identify would be fucking astronomically impossible. However, because the nature in which the snap is used, that it requires your fucking thumb to close it. Those things are hard to close. That action of closing it would leave oils and transfer DNA on the enamel that should have been swabbable and testable. And they chose not to fucking do that. They covered it with fingerprint powder. They did everything they weren't fucking supposed to do. There was blood on the sheath, Karen. There was blood on the sheath. Not Brian's. I had that Jules of all trades go after me and attack me and call me fucking names one time. Fuck her. I was right. I was right back then, and I've been more right about my analysis than I think any other single streamer out here. And I'm not saying that so my membership goes up. I'm saying it to be an arrogant fuck because it's true. Okay? It's fucking true. I've been more accurate in my analysis than all of these streamers because my analysis has been solely based on looking at the data given us that's verifiable. And even when it turned out to be a lie, I still had a better analysis, even with the lie being included. No, you never touch the underside of the button snap. The leather part and the top of the button snap. Absolutely right. Why wouldn't they have swabbed that, Yvonne, with a Q-tip when it's an enamel-coated piece of brass? I said a long time ago, there were 3 areas of that fucking sheath they swabbed. The sheath, inside the sheath, and the button snap. And I was told that I didn't know what I was talking about. I was a fucking conspiracy theorist. I was a drama queen. And now we know that I was right. But the inside of the snap they were referring to wasn't the area that contained the blade. It was inside the leather strap that the belt would go through. So, in fact, I was accurate way back then. So, fuck Jules all trades, too. She owes me an apology, and until I get an apology, she can go fucking suck dirt for all I care. For attacking me unjustifiably, for ignoring the facts that have been released to the public, and for claiming my interpretation was a fucking conspiracy theory equal to that of Dot. I wouldn't let her lick my shit, that fucking... She looks like a fucking thumb with a face printed on it. You go fuck herself. And I approached her in a decent manner. Directly. Not on a stream, but in emails. Not openly like I am here, but in emails. And I said, you know, why the fuck would you throw me under the bus like that when the evidence shows? And she's like, well, anybody that talks to me like that doesn't deserve an apology. So she was given the chance. But she, instead of addressing her behavior, and I'm sorry, ladies, don't hold this against me, but she turned it into a word that I used in my email to ignore addressing the fucking egregious behavior, her attacking me publicly on streams. Right? Fuck her. That's fine. Live your life, stupid fucking bitch. Anyhow, folks, patience and sensuality. That's Sergeant. when the moment is right, Tom. But being on a live stream isn't really that place to be patient and sensual. So, and you must, unfortunately, you know, you're not really the proper gender. I'm not too sure that you have I don't know if you're a woman or not. I'm guessing you're not. They've not only lied, the worst thing they did was lie to us by omission. They kept those text messages and that 911 call secret. They kept the information that the first thing Hunter did was run to the kitchen to grab a knife. They kept that shit secret. So many crucial pieces of information they've kept secret from the public that should never have been secret, because the only thing keeping it secret did was allow them to tell the public 8 billion times Brian did it. Okay? 8 billion times that Brian is the perpetrator. Only Brian could do it. This proves it. This, look at this. Meanwhile, the evidence that they hid from us showed that it was a weak case, a case that can't be proven. I don't know. I was like, why the fuck would you do what you did? Blah, blah, blah. I was a little heated. Rightly so. But I didn't call her any fucking name like I am now. I didn't go, oh, you're an F&A hole. I didn't do, no, that's not what I did at all. I contacted her directly and said, why the fuck would you say these things about me when in fact what you're saying is untrue? So, yeah. And I'm not saying don't go watch her. I'm not saying that she's an inept person or does. She has some value to some extent. We all do, right? So, you know, I mean, you know, I don't know. She does cover a lot of different cases. She does have some keen insights. And, you know, that was why I listened to her and I was stunned. I was even on streams with her. I was besides myself that she would openly attack me. It was on one of CJ's streams. I couldn't believe it. But, you know, it is what it is. It's over and done. I said my piece. Nothing will be done. No name calling. Then fair. Yeah, I didn't call her names. I was a bit upset, man. They took whose channel? CJ is gone? Why is CJ gone? Yeah, Yvonne. How's that? What do you mean they took his stream, Andy? I'm on I guess I can go into to YouTube and watch you guys. I usually sit in the StreamYard and I can't see your emojis there. What happened? So he's not streaming anymore? I used to call him the Hamburglar. He didn't like me for that. It bothered the shit out of him. I used to call him the burglar. CJ the burglar. Just because something on the stream came up and he had said something. I was like, uh-oh, CJ's the burglar. Yeah, and I really wasn't a fan of his because of the way he used Dago. And he was jumping off a Dago stream. So, yeah, I don't know why he quit. But there's been a few guys that have used Dago and then jumped off and tried setting up their own streams. And, you know, I think Rory is also gone too. Rory is no longer doing true crime. I don't know what Rory's doing. It's permanent. What did he do? Yeah, Dago's helped. I mean, it was through Dago's stream that you guys all, or a lot of you, or some of you, knew my personality through his stream. And some of you, not many of you, but some of you know me from politics from back when I did that. And then I don't even know why. I opened the stream because of Cletus. Otherwise, I never would have started this stream. Yeah, but Roy isn't doing true crime, is he, Pamela? I don't know what Roy is doing. What is surviving the truth? What is the theme of that stream? And if anybody's got a link to his stream, I'd like to go in there and give him some shit. Nah, well, he knows how to put on a drama queen. He's connected to Paramount and other things. And I think a lot of Rory's involvement out here was to try to assemble stuff for some of these networks. I'm not sure what he does or what he doesn't do. I don't know. So he's focusing on sex trafficking and human trafficking. That's good. Yeah, I haven't paid any attention to CJ. I haven't paid any attention to who's that guy? A.R. Haynes, a convict's point of view. I don't know. But listen, I've got a criminal record that exceeds his, and I never spent any time in a state or federal prison. Oh man. But listen, my crimes definitely were sentences that were crimes that was one of the major things that would happen to you. You'd go to a state or a federal prison. So I don't know what happened to fucking A.R. Haynes, but he wasn't that good of a criminal, and he obviously wasn't that good at keeping himself out of a prison. A.R. Haynes! Yeah, I don't know. I miss you when you're all clever, but nothing ever stays the same. Yeah, look at, like I said, I think all of us on this planet have intricate value. I think that's crucial that we all know that about ourselves. I also think anybody that talks down about America doesn't understand the significance and just by our existence, the benefit that this planet has gained as a result of our lifestyles and our way of living life. I think that you're ill-informed, and you probably should go live in the third world country so you can appreciate what we're really all about here. I think that as 4% of the world's population, we are the most unique group. And we have the most potential and the most capacity to carry that potential to fruition than any other group of people on the planet. And we're tricked, we're lied to. Even here, where the officials are really the people that need to be examined in this case, and many of the other ones. The same goes for Karen Reed. The same goes for the Delphi. The same goes for Gigolo. I mean, there's a narrative, there's a theme that connects all of these cases together, folks. And it's the systemic corruption within the justice system. And it spans the continental United States. That's the real story here. And it even eclipses, unfortunately, and I don't give a fuck if people like to hear this or not, it eclipses these 4 murders. It literally eclipses these 4 murders. This is happening all across the country in jurisdictions all over the place. No, I'm not near Long Island, nor am I near New York City. I've seen the trade tower. I was through New York City once, but I drove through high and fucking zoned out. So I saw some things, the Washington Bridge, but I didn't visit any of the things. I've never really even been to New York City, and I'm a New Yorker. So no. Yeah, but I listen, I can't tell you how heartbreaking it is for the victims and the families and survivors of all of the Idaho 4. But the real story, the real issue, the real danger, the real threat to everyday men and women of this country is your law enforcement and how they carry out the investigations. Whether it's directed towards the color of your skin or it's directed to protect a bigger interest, be it corporate or otherwise, that shit needs to be weeded out and eliminated. We need good, honest people that just want to put in an honest day's work and do the best they can, who they themselves are the exemplary example of following the law. Okay? And that they're no different and no better, and they're nothing other than a citizen equal to every one of us. That's how law enforcement needs to be rebuilt. You have no right to talk on your cell phone when you're on duty, no more than I do when I'm driving my car. So cut it the fuck out. You have no right to go through a stop sign and make a right-hand turn without coming to a complete stop. So cut it the fuck out. Right on red is something that means you need to come to a complete stop. Do it. The posted speed limit is 30. Drive 30. Not 31, not 29. Drive the limit. That's what your police officers, they should be the exemplified example of a justice system that practices what it preaches. More importantly, that we entrust to protect and enforce the laws that we've enforced as a citizenry. That's where our justice system needs to go. And I know it may seem pie in the sky, but it's not fucking hard to do the right thing, god damn it. It just isn't. It just isn't. And you're not asking too much from people when you're asking them to do the right thing. That's a big fucking deal. You're a law enforcement officer. You're a prosecuting attorney. You're a court-appointed defense attorney. It's not a big fucking deal. It's the simplest way to live life. No, I'm from New York, but I'm more in the center of the state. You know, I don't want to tell people where I live. My ex account carries my first and last name. And I just don't, you know, because I'm a controversial person. Obviously, I mean, I say controversial things, controversial topics, controversial, criticisms of others. So I'd rather people not come knocking on my door. Not that it would be safe for them, but I'd rather not have that. I just think that the whole concept that they're above the law because they're in charge of enforcing the law needs to be corrected. And it isn't that hard to correct. It literally is easy to correct. But it will not be corrected if we, the citizens, don't demand it be corrected. Right? So that's part of the other thing. And I think even people like Daniel, I don't want to say nobody's valueless. I think Daniel's providing a disservice, and Daniel is helping promote the exact thing that I'm trying to point out we need to end. And that's why people like Daniel and Tommy Jude and the paparazzis, and they're doing everything that doesn't help anything except their fucking pocket. And I just think that it's sad that we've lost it. We've lost as a nation. We're letting it slip away, or we're ignoring the value of the truth, the value of honesty, the value of respect. I mean, most of you in this room right now, if I put a poll, hit number 1 or hit number 2, do you like animals, 1, or do you like people? If you had to put them in an order, do you like an animal over people or people over animals? Most people would post 1. And that to me is just a very sad fucking day for humanity. Yeah, see? Do you like animals more than you like people? Or do you like people more than you like animals? 1 or 2. And I know a vast majority of you are going to say 1. And that's just, to me, tragic, man. It's fucking tragic. I want to give the benefit of the doubt to anybody that actually is in a position where the benefit of the doubt is demanded because of their position. Right? I want to give Judge Hippler the benefit of the doubt. He represents something that's important in my nation. And so I will give him a level of benefit of the doubt. It should be earned, and that respect should be given to him until such time as he violates that. And he proves that giving him the benefit of the doubt is a fool's errand. You know, I don't give Tommy Jude the benefit of the doubt anymore. He's proven to be, it's a fool's errand. The drunk turkey, a fool's errand, right? And I kind of live by that motto. And I wish, you know, I don't know, I don't wish others did that, but I wish others would try to understand the value in that, right? And that we, you know, like I don't really have any relationship with my neighbors. And the reason is there's things they do that really don't make my life as happy as I'd want it to be. But what's happening isn't so bad that my life is sad. In other words, I can live with it and still be happy. Right? And so I don't really want to even bring the topic up to them. Therefore, there's really nothing for me to talk about them. They know that of all the people on the street, I'm the least intrusive. I don't cause any noise. I don't cause any disturbances. And I live very peacefully, calmly, and happily in my nice little home. And I don't think that that's much to think that others around you would do the same thing, and they just wouldn't let their dogs bark at fucking 6 a.m. Right? I mean, there's just, how about it at midnight or 1 a.m? Should your dog be out there barking? The answer is no. Yeah, your assessment of Tommy is fair. You know, a good heart can't correct the fucked up head. You know, we're more than just our heart. And listen, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's the view that I place when I live life. The path to hell and misery is paved with good intentions. And you could promise yourself that nothing that happened, none of the victims in this crime that we talk about, that none of those people didn't have good intentions in life. But are good intentions or a good heart enough? If they're not followed up with the deed, a good heart is not a good heart if its deeds aren't following the good heart itself. Now, I may say some rough things and I may get vulgar and I may have some bad, corny fucking jokes. But having a good heart isn't enough. It just isn't. You have to be a good heart, not just have one. Right? And that's so many times it's the illusion of goodness, and that just isn't enough for me. I don't want the illusion of goodness. I'm a good guy, and I'm a good guy to anybody that associates with me. You're never ever would do, if I ask you to do something for me, you would never regret doing it. Let me make that point. You'd never regret doing it, because I'm going to make sure that you feel well rewarded and appreciated for what you did. That's being a good person. And that includes even times where maybe it isn't exactly you exactly didn't hold it to a standard we thought you would get to, but I won't hold that against you. My yard also looks pretty. I'm a good gardener. Yeah, so you know, we all have good hearts, but the thing is are we doing our best to act on having a good heart? And sometimes, you know, you have to protect your good heart. Yeah, you have to sometimes protect your good heart. That means, at least I feel that way. I think that that's fair. You know, you got a good heart, you don't let people take advantage of you. I think that if you have a good heart and you let people take advantage of you, that your heart isn't as good to you as it is to others. And what's the point of having a good heart if your good heart doesn't put you first? Because if I've learned anything in life, it's that the better I am for me, the more value I am to everyone else. And I don't mean monetary. I mean just in the way of living life. The better I am to myself, the more honest I am to myself, the more service and use and value I can give others. You see, that's to me a good heart. That doesn't mean I won't rear up and poke your fucking eyes out if you're getting crazy with me and want to start a brawl, or I won't defend myself with deadly force. I mean, that's what a good heart does. It has to keep itself and maintain itself. That doesn't mean if you attack me and you ridicule me and make fun of me and I try to have a discussion with you, you attack me again, then I'm not going to attack back. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I'm not going to shame myself, you see. And I come from a background where I had to fight my way to adulthood from 14 years old, being in the street. So it's all good. So if anybody just wanted to cut through to the end of the stream, let me remind you why I posted the stream. Let me give you what I've determined to be, through the data released to us by both the prosecution and the defense, the role Bethany Funk and her exculpatory evidence plays in this case. Bethany Funk responded to recorded events that began at 2:17 a.m. by making contact with Dylan Mortensen at 4:19 a.m. 4:17 a.m. is when the event happened. At 4:19, Bethany Funk's action to contact Dylan is in response to the events that she heard, not saw. That's the exculpatory data. That something of significance happened. Bethany Funk was aware. Bethany Funk responded to it. And the time that she made that initial response to what she heard was 4:19 a.m. And that's the exculpatory data that Ann has been trying to push forward without saying it out loud. That's the moment at 4:17 that Murphy started going crazy for the next 30 minutes. At 4:17, a camera picked up a thud, a struggle, and a whimper. That event prompted Bethany Funk's action, which shows the time began at 4:17, the crime. Okay? And that's exactly why Ann, her investigator, put forward that Bethany Funk's experience is unique to her, and only she can speak to it. Because the 4:17 a.m. event that was caught on a camera 50 feet from the home is what prompted the action of Bethany. And that action of Bethany shows that from 4:19 onward, the communications between her and Dylan Mortensen were happening during the commission of the crime. And it was the beginning of the crime. Not 4 a.m., not 4:07 a.m., but 4:17 a.m. the crime began. Therefore, the vehicle they ascribed to belonging to Brian Christopher Coberger that fled the scene at 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed cannot be connected to Coberger in the crime, because the crime had began simply 3 minutes prior to the movement of that vehicle. This is the exculpatory evidence that's been hidden from us for more than 2 years. And this exculpatory evidence should be the focus of all streamers, whether you agree with it or not. It should be a part of your discussion with your streamers, to tear apart, to agree with, to add to subtract to. But it should be a strong part of everyday discussion around the Idaho 4, and in conjunction with a focus on the bullshit people that put this story together and kept it secret for more than 2 years. We should have known this. Stop trying to solve the crime and start looking at where the problem with the crimes are. And the problem is law enforcement in Idaho. So that's how I'm going to end the stream. And that little clip, people want to cut it and share it. People want to cut it. People want to make fun of me and share it with other streamers. You can make fun of it all the fuck you want. I don't really care. So that's it for tonight. I want to thank, there's still 256 of you in here. I almost feel sad that I've got to disconnect the stream with that many people in here. There's what do we got over here on YouTube? I'm doing a refresh on my page. And let me just say this. This is one of the rare times that I'm going to say this, and I don't have to say it. I was going to say we need 100 likes to get this in the algorithm. But I want to thank the YouTube users that gave me so far 129 likes, which means that this stream should end up in the algorithm, and people that may never have heard this stream may be exposed to this stream. And I appreciate that very much. So like I say, and I'll always say, be good, or be bad. But if you're going to be bad, don't get caught. Everybody have a good night.